The wine glass shattered against marble like a gunshot, red liquid spreading across white silk like blood at a crime scene. Lena Moretti stood frozen, 6 months pregnant, surrounded by the city's elite, their laughter sharp as broken glass. She'd walked into this ballroom invisible. Now every eye tracked her humiliation with predatory interest. What she didn't know: her husband wasn't just any man. Adrian Vale was a name whispered in back rooms, a shadow that moved fortunes and ruined lives. And he'd just watched someone push his pregnant wife. Some mistakes can't be forgiven. Some debts can't be paid. If you want to see how one night of cruelty cost millions in retribution, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago, cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering that seemed to mock Lena every time she looked at it. The annual Sterling Foundation Gala. Black tie. The Plaza Hotel. She'd held it over the kitchen trash can twice, ready to drop it in with the coffee grounds and eggshells. But Adrian had found her there both times, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "You don't have to go," he'd said the first time. "I want you to go," he'd said the second. There was a difference between those two statements, and Lena understood it. Adrian rarely asked for anything. When he did, it mattered. So here she was, stepping out of a black town car that probably cost more than her childhood home, wearing a maternity gown that had seemed elegant in the boutique but now felt like a costume. The plaza rose before her, all golden light and old money, the kind of building that had watched decades of New York's elite pass through its doors. Tonight, it would watch her try to belong. "Mrs. Vale." The driver offered his hand, his face professionally neutral. She wondered if he could see her hands shaking. Adrian emerged from the other side, buttoning his tuxedo jacket with the kind of ease that came from wearing them regularly. He looked like he'd been born in formal wear, 6'2", broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched silver at the temples, and eyes that shifted between gray and blue depending on the light. At 42, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd learned long ago that he didn't need to announce his power. People simply felt it. He'd been feeling it for 27 years, since the day his father died, and left him an empire built on blood and business in equal measure. "Ready?" he asked, coming around to offer his arm. Lena adjusted the silk shawl around her shoulders, trying to hide the way the dress pulled tight across her swollen belly. "Define ready." His mouth quirked, not quite a smile, but close. Breathing, vertical, present. "Then sure, I'm extremely ready." They climbed the steps together. Lena caught her reflection in the glass doors. A small woman, 5'4" in heels she could barely walk in, with dark hair pulled back too severely and a face that looked younger than 32. She'd tried makeup, but her hand had been unsteady. One eye had more liner than the other. The lipstick was already wearing off. Next to Adrian, she looked like a child playing dress-up. The doorman pulled open the entrance with a white-gloved hand. Sound washed over them. Laughter, conversation, the clink of crystal, a string quartet playing something classical that Lena didn't recognize. The lobby had been transformed into a reception area, servers circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than her weekly grocery budget used to be. Used to be. Before Adrian. Before everything changed. "Mr. Vale." A woman materialized beside them, 60-something, with the kind of bone structure that aged into elegance rather than erosion. "We're so pleased you could make it." "Mrs. Sterling." Adrian's voice carried warmth that Lena knew was precisely calibrated. "Thank you for the invitation." The woman's gaze flickered to Lena, a quick assessment that felt clinical. "And this must be your wife. How lovely." The pause before lovely was just long enough to land. "Lena," Adrian said, his hand settling on the small of her back, "this is Catherine Sterling. Her foundation does remarkable work with children's literacy programs." "It's nice to meet you," Lena managed. Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "Charming," Catherine said, the word somehow emptied of meaning. "You must try the salmon. It's Pierre's recipe, flown in from Paris just for tonight. Adrian, I absolutely must steal you for a moment. Senator Michaels has been asking about that development project in Brooklyn." She was already turning, expecting Adrian to follow. It wasn't a request. It was an assumption that her time was more valuable than anyone else's, that interrupting a conversation was her right. that the pregnant woman in the ill-fitting dress wouldn't be missed. Adrian's hand pressed against Lena's back, a question without words. "Go," Lena said quietly. "I'm fine." His eyes searched her face. She made herself smile, the expression feeling painted on. 10 minutes, he said, and there was something in his voice that made it sound like a promise and a threat directed at Catherine Sterling simultaneously. Then he was gone, moving through the crowd with Catherine's hand on his arm, and Lena was alone in a room full of strangers who probably wondered what the hell she was doing there. She grabbed a glass of sparkling water from a passing server, no champagne, not anymore, and tried to look like she had somewhere to be. The trick to invisibility, she'd learned, was moving with purpose even when you had none. If you stood still, you became a target. If you drifted aimlessly, you looked lost. But if you walked like you were heading somewhere specific, people's eyes slid right past you. She made it halfway across the lobby before the technique failed. "Oh my God, is that the wife?" The voice came from her left, female, loud enough to be heard but pitched like it was meant to be private. Lena's steps faltered. "That's her." A second voice, deeper, amused. "Can you believe it? Adrian Vale married what was she, a waitress? I heard she was a nurse at some clinic in Queens. Same difference, darling, bottom feeding either way." Lena's fingers tightened on her glass. "Keep walking, don't engage, they want a reaction." "Look at that dress. I mean, really look at it. That's off-the-rack maternity wear. You can see the tag from here." Maybe he married her for the tax break. Laughter, sharp and glittering. Lena made it to a corner near the coat check, pressing herself into the shadows like she could disappear into the wallpaper. Her face burned. The dress had been expensive by her standards, $600 that had made her physically ill to spend. Adrian had handed her his credit card without blinking, told her to buy whatever made her feel beautiful. She should have bought something better. She should have known $600 was nothing in this world. She should have. "Lena Moretti," a new voice, silk wrapped around a knife. "Or I suppose it's Lena Vale now. How absolutely unexpected to see you here." Lena turned. The woman facing her was maybe 40, poured into a black gown that probably cost more than a car, with platinum hair and the kind of face that came from excellent genetics and better cosmetic work. Her smile was perfect. Her eyes were dead. "I'm sorry," Lena said. "I don't think we've met." Victoria Ashford. She extended a hand heavy with rings. "I'm a dear friend of Adrian's, known him for years. We traveled together extensively before he, well." Her gaze dropped to Lena's belly, the pause speaking volumes. "Before his circumstances changed." Lena shook her hand briefly. Victoria's grip was surprisingly strong, her nails sharp against Lena's palm. "Adrian's never mentioned you," Lena said. Victoria's smile didn't waver. "I'm sure there are many things Adrian hasn't mentioned. He's always been private about certain aspects of his life. Tell me, how are you finding all this?" She gestured at the ballroom, the crowd, the excess. "It must be quite different from what you're used to." "It's fine. Of course it is. I'm sure you're doing your very best to fit in." Victoria leaned in conspiratorially, her perfume expensive and overwhelming. "A word of advice, dear? The gray-haired woman over there in the blue gown? That's Judge Morrison. Her husband is the senior partner at Whitmore and Associates. They handle most of Adrian's legal affairs. You might want to avoid her. She has very strong opinions about appropriate social circles." Lena's throat tightened. "I'm not here to climb social ladders." "No, I suppose you already climbed the only one that mattered, didn't you?" Victoria's tone remained light, conversational. "Congratulations on that, by the way. I know plenty of women who've tried to land Adrian Vale. You must have skills the rest of us lack." The implication was clear. Lena felt her face flush hot. "If you'll excuse me," she said, stepping around Victoria. "Oh, but you can't leave yet. The evening's just starting." Victoria caught her arm, fingers digging in just hard enough to keep her in place. "Besides, I wanted to introduce you to some people. They're all dying to meet Adrian's mysterious bride." Before Lena could protest, Victoria was pulling her toward a group of women clustered near the entrance to the ballroom proper. They looked up as Victoria approached, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. "Ladies," Victoria announced, "may I present Lena Vale, Adrian's new wife. Lena, this is Margaret Rothschild, Diana Chen, and Sophia Blackwell. We were just discussing the hospital wing dedication next month. Hello, Lena said quietly. The three women exchanged glances. Margaret, a severe woman with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, spoke first. How do you know Adrian? Her tone suggested she already knew the answer and found it distasteful. We met at the clinic where I worked. A clinic? Diana's lips pursed. How philanthropic of him. It was actually Lena started. And you're expecting, I see, Sophia interrupted, her gaze dropping to Lena's stomach with clinical interest. How far along? 6 months. 6 months? Victoria's voice dripped false concern. And you married, what, 4 months ago? The timeline is quite romantic, isn't it? The implication hung in the air like smoke. Lena's hands clenched at her sides. We married as soon as we could, she said evenly. I'm sure you did. Margaret's smile was cold. Adrian does have a tendency toward impulsive decisions. Remember that investment in the waterfront property, Victoria? Everyone told him it was a disaster. Of course, he proved us all wrong. Her eyes fixed on Lena, though occasionally even the brilliant Adrian Vale makes mistakes he can't recover from. Speaking of mistakes, Diana said, her voice carrying just far enough, did you see what the mayor's wife wore last week? That horrendous green thing? I swear some people have no sense of what's appropriate for their station. Station is such an important thing, Victoria agreed. Knowing where you belong. Don't you think so, Lena? Lena wanted to walk away. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and leave, to find Adrian, to get out of this building and never come back. But something held her there. Stubbornness, maybe, or pride, or the simple fact that running would confirm everything these women already believed about her. I think station is something people use to feel superior when they don't have anything else to offer, Lena heard herself say. The temperature around them dropped. Margaret's eyes narrowed. How fascinating. You have opinions. Tell me, dear. What exactly is it that you do offer? Besides the obvious. Her gaze flickered to Lena's stomach again. I'm a nurse. We're a nurse, Sophia corrected. I assume you're not working anymore? Adrian certainly doesn't need the supplemental income. I'm on leave until after the baby. How practical. Victoria's tone made it sound like an insult. And after the baby? Will you be returning to your little clinic? Or has Adrian set you up somewhere more suitable? I haven't decided yet. Of course you haven't. I'm sure you're very busy adjusting to your new circumstances, learning which fork to use, that sort of thing. Diana's laugh was light and cruel. It must be terribly overwhelming. Lena felt something crack inside her chest. These women didn't just dislike her. They found her existence offensive, a stain on their carefully maintained world. Lena. Adrian's voice cut through the conversation like a blade. He materialized at her side, his hand finding hers automatically. I've been looking for you. His presence shifted everything. Victoria's predatory smile smoothed into something approaching genuine. The other women straightened, their expressions transforming. Adrian, Victoria purred, we were just getting to know your lovely wife. Adrian's eyes moved between them, reading something in Lena's face that made his jaw tighten fractionally. How generous of you. Unfortunately, we need to find our table. The dinner service is about to begin. Of course. Victoria stepped back, her hand trailing across Adrian's arm in a gesture of casual familiarity. We'll continue our chat later, Lena. I have so many stories to share about Adrian's past. I'm sure you'd find them enlightening. Adrian's hand tightened on Lena's. He led her away without responding, navigating through the crowd toward the ballroom entrance. Lena could feel the women's eyes following them, could imagine their whispered commentary. You all right? Adrian asked quietly. Fine. Lena. I said I'm fine. Her voice came out sharper than intended. She took a breath, forcing herself to calm. They're just protective of you. I get it. Protective. Adrian's tone suggested he had other words for it. What did Victoria say? Nothing important, just making sure I know my place. They reached the ballroom entrance. Inside, round tables dressed in white linen filled the space, each set for 12 with crystal and silver that caught the chandelier light. The string quartet had moved to a raised platform, their music drifting over conversation and laughter. Lena estimated there were maybe 300 people in the room, all of them looking like they belonged in a magazine spread about old money and older power. "Table 8, Adrian said, checking the seating chart. They wove through the crowd toward their assigned spot near the center of the room, close enough to the stage to be significant, far enough from the head table to make a statement about hierarchy. 6 people were already seated. Lena recognized Senator Michaels from the news, his wife beside him in understated elegance. The others were strangers, though they looked up with the same assessing interest she'd seen all evening. "Adrian," the senator stood, extending his hand. "Glad you could make it. Catherine said she'd wrangled you into attending." "She can be persuasive." Adrian shook his hand, then pulled out Lena's chair. "Senator, this is my wife, Lena." "A pleasure." The senator's handshake was firm but brief, his attention already returning to Adrian. "I wanted to discuss that zoning issue we talked about. The committee is meeting next week, and I think we could push it through if—" Adrian sat down next to Lena, and the conversation continued over and around her like she was a piece of furniture. The senator's wife offered a tight smile before returning to her discussion with the woman on her left about summer houses in the Hamptons. The couple across from them, introduced briefly as the Hawthorns, something about commercial real estate, barely acknowledged Lena's existence before diving into market talk with the man beside them. Servers appeared with the first course. Lena stared at the plate set before her, something involving scallops and microgreens arranged in a pattern that looked more like art than food. She picked up her fork, watched which one the senator's wife used first, and tried to eat without drawing attention. "Cease. Absolutely disastrous policy decision," someone was saying. "The impact on property values alone. Merger talks have been going on for months, but the board is deadlocked. Saw the yacht specifications, and honestly, for $30 million you'd expect better." Lena pushed a scallop around her plate. It probably tasted amazing. She couldn't tell. Everything in her mouth turned to sawdust. Adrian's hand found her knee under the table, a brief squeeze of solidarity. She glanced at him, found him nodding at something the senator was saying while his eyes flickered to her with concern. She made herself smile, the expression feeling like a mask. The first course was cleared. The second appeared, duck breast with a sauce whose name Lena didn't catch. Around them, conversation ebbed and flowed with the wine. She stuck to water, watching her glass get refilled 3 times while everyone else moved from white to red to champagne. "Telling you, the South Asian market is where the real growth potential. Foundation actually does decent work, even if Catherine is insufferable. Divorce settlements in this city are criminal, absolutely criminal." Lena excused herself between courses, needing air and space and a moment where she didn't have to pretend she belonged. She found the ladies' room, a marble sanctuary of gilt mirrors and fresh flowers, blessedly empty. She locked herself in a stall and pressed her forehead against the cool metal door, breathing carefully. This was her life now. This was what she'd signed up for when she married Adrian. Except she hadn't married Adrian for this. She'd married him because on a random Tuesday night, 4 months pregnant and terrified, he'd looked at her like she mattered, because he'd asked her what she wanted, not what he could give her. Because when her apartment building's landlord had tried to evict her for being pregnant and unmarried, Adrian had bought the entire building and fired him. Because she'd fallen in love with a man who made her feel safe in a world that had never been safe. But safety came with a price. She'd known that. She just hadn't realized how high it would be. The bathroom door opened. Voices filtered in, female, multiple, speaking in the overlapping way of women who'd had too much champagne and not enough food. "Can't believe he brought her here. Someone needed to tell him this was a mistake. Pregnant before the wedding, obviously. Just look at the timeline." Lena went very still in the stall. "I give it 2 years, 3 at most." Victoria's voice, unmistakable. "Adrian will realize what a disaster this is, pay her off, and move on to someone appropriate." "Oh, the prenup must be ironclad," another woman said. "Diana, maybe." "Oh, I'm sure. Adrian's not stupid, but still the humiliation of it all. Bringing some Queen's Clinic nurse to the Sterling Gala? It's like showing up with a stray dog and expecting everyone to pretend it's a pedigreed show champion." Laughter echoed off marble. "Did you see her dress? Off the rack. Literally off the rack. And that awful hair. Someone needs to give her the number of a decent stylist. Though I suppose you can't polish a stone into a diamond." "Be fair, ladies. She's probably doing her best. It's not her fault she doesn't know any better. You can't expect sophistication from someone who grew up in, where was it, Brooklyn? Queens? Does it matter? It's all the same, really. Not Manhattan. More laughter. Lena's hands curled into fists on her lap. I almost feel sorry for Adrian, Victoria said. He's clearly trying to do the right thing. She trapped him with the pregnancy and he's too decent to abandon her. But God, the toll it must take, pretending she's something she's not. Maybe she is something more, a new voice said tentatively. Adrian's not easily fooled. If he married her, maybe she has qualities we're not seeing. Oh, please, Cassandra. We all know exactly what qualities attracted Adrian. They're currently on display under that hideous dress. Men think with their, well, you know. Even smart men make stupid choices when their hormones are involved. The voices moved away, fading as the women returned to the ballroom. Lena sat frozen in the stall, their words echoing louder than they'd been spoken. Trapped him. Doesn't know any better. Stray dog. She stood slowly, legs unsteady. Her reflection in the mirror showed exactly what they'd described. A woman out of her depth, wearing the wrong dress, carrying the wrong background, married to a man who deserved better. Except that wasn't true. That was what they wanted her to believe. But the words burrowed deep anyway, making homes in all her old insecurities. Lena washed her hands, reapplied her lipstick with shaking fingers, and walked back into the ballroom with her head up because the alternative was giving them what they wanted. Dinner was winding down. Dessert plates littered the tables, creme brulee that Lena couldn't taste. Coffee appeared. The lights dimmed slightly as Catherine Sterling took the stage, launching into a speech about the Foundation's accomplishments over the past year. Lena barely heard it. She was too busy being invisible at a table of people who'd decided she didn't exist. When Catherine finally finished speaking, something about surpassing donation goals and plans for expansion, the crowd applauded politely. The string quartet gave way to a small orchestra, and the first notes of a waltz filled the ballroom. Dance with me, Adrian said quietly. Lena looked at him. You don't have to. I'm not asking because I have to. He stood, offering his hand. Dance with me. Around them, couples were moving to the floor. Lena saw Victoria watching them, her expression unreadable. She saw Diana whispering to Sophia. She saw 100 eyes tracking their movement. I don't know how to waltz, she admitted. I do, trust me. She put her hand in his, let him lead her to the floor. His arm settled around her waist, careful of her belly, pulling her close enough to feel solid and real. Just follow, he murmured against her ear. I've got you. They moved into the music. Lena stumbled twice in the first minute, stepping on his feet and mumbling apologies. But Adrian's hand was steady on her back, guiding her through the steps, and slowly she found the rhythm. They turned across the floor, and for a few measures, she forgot about Victoria and the other women, forgot about the whispers and the judgment, forgot about everything except the feel of Adrian's hand holding hers. Whatever they said, Adrian spoke quietly, ignore it. I'm fine. You're not, and you don't have to be. His eyes found hers, gray-blue in the chandelier light. I know this world. I know these people. They eat vulnerability for breakfast and shit out superiority. But you don't owe them anything, Lena. Not your comfort, not your confidence, and sure as hell not your dignity. I'm a clinic nurse from Queens who's pregnant and wearing an off-the-rack dress, she said. They're not wrong. They're not right either. You're a trauma nurse who saved more lives than everyone in this room combined. You grew up in Queens, yeah, in a neighborhood these people drive past with their windows up. You're wearing a dress you picked because it made you feel good, and you're carrying my child. His hand tightened on her waist. None of that makes you less than anyone here. Most of it makes you more. Lena's throat tightened. You don't have to defend me. I'm not defending you. I'm stating facts. They turned again, moving past Victoria and her dance partner. You want to know what I see when I look at you? Not what they see. Not some conquest or mistake. I see the woman who held a kid's hand while he died from a gunshot wound and sang to him so he wouldn't be scared. I see someone who gives a damn about people these socialites wouldn't even acknowledge exist. I see... The music cut out. Not naturally, but abruptly, like someone had pulled a plug. The ballroom went silent. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lena and Adrian stopped moving, turning toward the stage where Catherine Sterling stood looking bewildered. Then the lights went out. Not all of them. The emergency lights stayed on, casting the ballroom in dim, shadowy illumination. But the chandeliers, the table lights, the stage spots, all dark. "What the hell?" someone said. The crowd shifted, nervous energy replacing the waltz's grace. Lena pressed closer to Adrian, his arms solid around her. "Stay with me," he said quietly. The lights came back on, slowly like someone was bringing them up on a dimmer. The ballroom returned to visibility. Tables, people, confusion. And standing near their table, a woman in a server's uniform holding Lena's purse. Not near their table, at their table, going through Lena's purse. "Hey!" Lena pulled away from Adrian, moving toward the table. "That's mine!" The woman looked up, startled. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of nervous energy that came from getting caught doing something wrong. "I was just," she started. "You were just what? Stealing?" Lena reached for her purse. The woman jerked it back. Several items fell out. Lena's wallet, her phone, a lipstick, her keys. They clattered across the table, and in the process, knocked over a full glass of red wine. The wine arced through the air in slow motion, a perfect liquid parabola that ended across the front of Lena's dress. Cold. Shocking. Red spreading across white silk like blood. Lena gasped, stepping back. The wine soaked through immediately, staining everything it touched. "Oh my God," the server said, looking genuinely horrified. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean—" "What the hell is going on here?" Catherine Sterling appeared, flanked by security. "What happened to the lights? And why is there—" She stopped, taking in the scene. The wine-stained dress, the spilled purse contents, the server looking guilty. "Margaret, explain this." "I have no idea," Margaret Rothschild said, appearing beside Catherine, but her eyes held something else. Satisfaction, maybe. Or vindication. "Though it appears your staff needs better supervision." A crowd was forming. Lena stood at its center, wine dripping from her dress to puddle on the floor, her purse contents scattered across the table like evidence of something sordid. She could feel every eye on her, could hear the whispers starting, could sense the shift from confusion to judgment. "I'm sorry," the server said again, looking between Lena and Catherine. "The lights went out and I was just I wasn't stealing anything, I swear." "Get out!" Catherine's voice was ice. "You're fired. Security, escort her out immediately." "But I didn't." "Now." Two security guards appeared, taking the woman by the arms. She resisted for a moment, trying to explain, but they dragged her toward the exit. Her protests faded into the general noise of the ballroom returning to life. Lena stood frozen, wine soaking into her skin, humiliation complete. "Well," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the sudden quiet. "I suppose that's one way to make an impression." Laughter. Not loud, not cruel exactly, but present. Polite laughter from people who'd been looking for confirmation of everything they already believed. Lena. Adrian was beside her, his jacket already off. He draped it around her shoulders, hiding the stain. "Come on, we're leaving." "I'm sorry," Lena heard herself say. To Adrian, to Catherine, to the room full of people watching her fall apart. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "You don't apologize," Adrian said sharply. "You didn't do anything wrong." But she had. She'd existed. She'd come here. She'd thought she could fit in. Adrian's hand was on her back, guiding her toward the exit. People parted to let them through, their expressions ranging from pity to satisfaction. Lena kept her head down, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other, trying not to cry in front of these people who would feed on her tears like sharks on blood. They made it to the lobby, then the front steps, then the sidewalk where the town car waited, the driver already opening the door. Lena climbed in, Adrian right behind her. The door closed, sealing them away from the lights and laughter and judgment. The car pulled away from the plaza. And Lena finally let herself break. The tears came silent at first, just wetness on her cheeks that she wiped away with shaking hands. Then her breath hitched, once, twice, and the sobs broke through like a dam giving way. Lena pressed her face into Adrian's jacket, still wrapped around her shoulders, smelling of his cologne and safety. Adrian didn't speak. He pulled her against him, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other secure around her waist. The car moved through Manhattan traffic, streetlights strobing past the windows, and he just held her while she fell apart. "I ruined everything," she finally managed, the words muffled against his shoulder. You didn't ruin anything. I shouldn't have gone. You told me I didn't have to go. And I told you I wanted you there. His voice was quiet, controlled in a way that felt dangerous. That hasn't changed. Lena pulled back enough to look at him. His jaw was tight, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. His eyes had gone cold, the gray overtaking the blue. Adrian, that server, he said. She didn't trip. She didn't accidentally spill wine on you. What? The lights went out at exactly the right moment. She was at our table, going through your purse, positioned perfectly to make a scene. Adrian's thumb traced her cheekbone, wiping away tears. That wasn't an accident, Lena. That was planned. The words took a moment to land. When they did, Lena felt something shift in her chest, grief giving way to anger. Who would do that? Someone who wanted to make you look exactly how you felt in that room, small, out of place, wrong. His hand tightened on her waist. Someone who wanted you humiliated badly enough to orchestrate it. Victoria. The name came out flat. Lena remembered the satisfaction in her eyes, the way she'd appeared just in time to deliver the final cut. She was right there, she said. I don't care what she said. Adrian's voice dropped lower. I care that she thought she could touch what's mine. The possessiveness should have rankled. Instead, it felt like armor settling over raw skin. What are you going to do? Lena asked. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. He hit a number, lifting the device to his ear. It rang twice before someone answered. Marcus, I need information on tonight's event staff at the plaza. Specifically, a server, dark hair, mid-20s, who was fired for spilling wine. I want to know who hired her, who recommended her, and every single person she spoke to before the incident. He paused, listening. No, not tomorrow. Tonight. Text me when you have something. He ended the call, already scrolling to another number. James, tell me about the plaza's electrical system. What would it take to kill the ballroom lights remotely? Another pause. I don't care if it's theoretically possible. Someone did it tonight. Find out how. He hung up, made a third call. David, run financials on Victoria Ashford. Everything. Bank accounts, investments, debts, credit cards. I want to know if she's made any unusual transactions in the past month. Lena watched him work, making calls with the efficiency of someone conducting business. Except this business was vengeance wearing a tuxedo. Part of her wanted to tell him to stop, that it didn't matter, that she could handle some rich women being cruel. But she didn't, because it did matter. And she couldn't handle it. And maybe she didn't have to. The car pulled up outside their building, a converted brownstone in the West Village that Adrian had bought before they were married. The doorman opened the car door, his expression carefully neutral as he took in Lena's wine-stained dress and tear-streaked face. Mrs. Vale. Mr. Vale. Evening, Robert, Adrian said, helping Lena out. His jacket stayed wrapped around her shoulders, hiding the worst of the damage. They rode the elevator to the third floor in silence. Adrian's phone buzzed repeatedly, texts coming in already. He ignored them, his attention on Lena. When the doors opened, he guided her down the hall to their apartment, unlocking the door and ushering her inside. The space was beautiful, high ceilings, original woodwork, furniture that managed to be both expensive and comfortable. Lena had lived here for 3 months and still felt like a guest half the time. Go shower, Adrian said. I'll bring you something to eat. I'm not hungry. When's the last time you ate something that actually had calories? Lena thought back to the scallops she'd pushed around her plate, the duck she couldn't taste. This morning, toast. Go shower, I'll make food. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion was winning over pride. She kicked off her heels, her feet ached, swollen and angry, and walked to their bedroom. The dress came off in pieces, silk sticking to her skin where the wine had soaked through. She left it in a heap on the bathroom floor and stepped into the shower, turning the water as hot as she could stand. Red spiraled down the drain, wine and tears and the feeling of being watched, judged, found wanting. Lena pressed her forehead against the tile. The baby kicked, a flutter of movement that had become familiar over the past few weeks. She put her hand on her stomach, feeling the life growing inside her. The reason for all of this, the catalyst that had turned her world upside down. She hadn't trapped Adrian. But she understood why people thought she had. They'd met 9 months ago at the free clinic in Astoria, where she worked night shifts. Adrian had walked in at 2 in the morning with a knife wound in his side, bleeding through a dress shirt that probably cost more than her monthly rent. No insurance card, no ID, just cash and a story about a mugging that didn't quite add up. Lena should have called the police. Instead, she'd stitched him up, given him antibiotics, and told him to come back in a week to have the sutures removed. He'd come back. Not in a week. The next night, carrying takeout from a Thai place 3 blocks away. "You looked hungry," he'd said. They'd eaten pad Thai in the break room at 3 in the morning, talking about nothing important. He'd come back the next night. And the next. Sometimes with food, sometimes with coffee, always at the end of her shift, when the clinic was empty and the city was quiet. She'd known he was dangerous. Not to her, never to her, but in the way men with power are dangerous. He carried himself like someone used to being obeyed, spoke with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. The scar on his ribs wasn't his only one. Neither was the tattoo on his back, an elaborate design she'd glimpsed when checking his wound, something that looked expensive and permanent and meaningful. "What do you do?" she'd asked one night, 3 weeks into their strange routine. "Business," he'd said, which wasn't an answer. "What kind of business?" "The kind that occasionally gets me stabbed." "That's not reassuring." "I'm not trying to be reassuring." He'd looked at her across cold coffee and empty containers. "I'm trying to be honest." The honesty had been the thing. Not the money she didn't know he had yet, not the power she hadn't recognized. Just the way he looked at her like she was real, solid, worth his time. They'd slept together 6 weeks after meeting. Her apartment, her bed, her choice. He'd been careful with her, almost hesitant, asking permission for things that didn't usually require words. Afterward, he'd stayed, his hand tracing patterns on her shoulder while traffic sounds filtered through the window. "I need to tell you something," he'd said. "Okay." "My name isn't Thomas." She'd pulled back to look at him. He'd been using Thomas since that first night, a name that fit his story about consulting work and business travel. "What is it?" "Adrian Vale." The name had meant nothing to her then. It should have. Vale Industries was in the news regularly, usually attached to real estate development or political donations or society page coverage. But Lena didn't read the society pages. She worked 70-hour weeks and went home to a studio apartment with a radiator that barely worked. "Okay," she'd said. "Adrian." "You don't recognize it." "Should I?" He'd laughed, quiet and surprised. "Most people do." "I'm not most people." "No, you're really not." She'd found out later what Adrian Vale actually meant. The scope of his wealth, the reach of his influence, the darker rumors about how his family had built their empire and what Adrian had done to keep it after his father died. By then, she was already in love with him, and 2 months pregnant. The shower water ran cold. Lena shut it off, wrapping herself in a towel that was probably worth more than her old security deposit. She dried off, pulled on pajama pants and one of Adrian's t-shirts, the closest thing to comfortable she could find, and walked back to the kitchen. Adrian had made pasta, not complicated, just spaghetti with butter and garlic, but the smell made her stomach wake up and remember it was hungry. He'd set 2 places at the island, poured her a glass of milk, and was currently on his phone again, pacing while someone talked on the other end. "I don't care if she has friends at the foundation. I want every donation she's ever made tracked. If there's a connection between her and the server, find it." He paused. "Good. Send me what you have so far." He ended the call as Lena sat down. His eyes tracked over her, hair wet, face scrubbed clean, no makeup to hide behind. "Better?" he asked. "Cleaner." She picked up a fork, twirling pasta around it. "Your shirt's probably wine-stained." "It's a shirt. An expensive shirt." "It's still just a shirt." Adrian sat down across from her, his own plate untouched. "Eat." Lena ate. The pasta was simple and perfect, exactly what her stomach needed. She was halfway through her portion when Adrian's phone buzzed with an incoming text. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "What?" "The server's name is Jennifer Costas. She was hired 3 weeks ago through a temp agency. The agency got her name from a recommendation." He looked up. "Want to guess who made the recommendation?" "Victoria." Victoria's personal assistant, which is the same thing with plausible deniability built in. Adrian set his phone down, reaching for his own fork. Jennifer Costas has no history of event work. She's a theater student at NYU. Someone paid her $5,000 to take that job and make a scene tonight. Lena's appetite disappeared. She paid someone to humiliate me. She paid someone to remove you from an event where your presence bothered her. The humiliation was just a bonus. Why? The question came out smaller than Lena intended. I'm nobody to her. I'm just, you're my wife. That makes you a threat. To what? Her status? Her social circle? I don't want any of that. No, but you have something she wants. Adrian's eyes held hers. Me. The word hung between them. Lena set down her fork. Victoria and I have history, Adrian said carefully. We were involved years ago. It didn't end well. She's been persistent about wanting to revisit that relationship. Define involved. We slept together on and off for about 2 years. It was casual. At least I thought it was casual. He paused. She thought differently. When did it end? 4 years ago. I made it clear there was no future between us. She said she understood. Then she spent the next 3 years showing up places she knew I'd be, making sure I knew she was available, dropping hints about how well-suited we were. His jaw tightened. I never encouraged it. I made my position clear multiple times. She chose not to hear it. Lena thought about the way Victoria had touched Adrian's arm earlier, the familiarity in her voice when she called him by his first name, the way she'd looked at Lena like an obstacle to be removed. She hates me, Lena said. She hates that you exist. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Adrian reached across the island, taking her hand. His fingers were warm, solid, real. I'm going to handle this. How? However I need to. There was something in his tone that made Lena's stomach tighten. She'd heard that voice before, usually in phone calls he took in his office with the door closed. Business voice, he called it. The voice of a man who solved problems permanently. Don't hurt her, Lena said. I'm not going to hurt her. Adrian's thumb traced circles on her palm. I'm going to ruin her. There's a difference. Adrian, she orchestrated an assault on my pregnant wife in a room full of witnesses who'll spend the next week talking about it. She did it deliberately, methodically, with enough distance to seem innocent while destroying your reputation and making sure you never feel comfortable in that world again. His voice stayed level, conversational almost. She crossed a line, Lena, not just with you, with me, and that has consequences. Lena should have felt something, guilt maybe, or concern for Victoria despite everything, but all she felt was tired. Bone deep, soul tired in a way that had nothing to do with the baby or the late hour. I don't want to be the reason people get hurt, she said quietly. You're not. Victoria is the reason Victoria is going to get hurt. She made choices. She'll deal with the results. Adrian stood, coming around the island. He pulled Lena against him, careful of her belly, his hand settling in her hair. I know you want to be fair. It's one of the things I love about you. But fairness doesn't work with people like Victoria. They see it as weakness and exploit it. The only language they understand is power. And you have power. I have power, and I'm going to use it. His phone buzzed again and again. Messages piling up as his people sent information, building a case, gathering ammunition. Lena felt the moment shift, Adrian pulling away mentally even as he held her physically, his mind already working through scenarios and responses. Go to bed, he said. I have calls to make. How many? Enough. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, quick and claiming. Sleep. Tomorrow's going to be better. Lena wanted to believe him. She walked to their bedroom, climbed into sheets that smelled like expensive detergent, and lay in the dark, listening to Adrian's voice drift through the apartment. Low, controlled, explaining things to people who answered his calls at 1 a.m. because he was Adrian Vale, and when he called, you answered. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. The bed beside her was empty, sheets cold. She checked her phone, 9:30, which meant she'd slept almost 10 hours. The apartment was quiet. Lena found Adrian in his office, still in last night's tuxedo pants and dress shirt, tie discarded, sleeves rolled up. His laptop was open, phone on speaker while someone talked numbers and accounts. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway, held up one finger. Good. Transfer it by noon. I want confirmation when it's done. He ended the call, sitting back in his chair. Morning. Did you sleep? No. Adrian. I made coffee. And there's breakfast in the kitchen, eggs, toast, fruit. You need to eat. Lena crossed to him instead, turning his chair so she could see his face properly. He looked tired, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. But there was something else, too. Satisfaction, maybe. The expression of a man who'd spent the night solving problems. What did you do? She asked. Had conversations. What kind of conversations? The kind that end with results. He pulled her down to sit on his lap, awkward with her belly, but he made it work. Victoria's foundation funding is being pulled. 3 major donors called this morning to withdraw support. Adrian, the plaza is reviewing their vendor contracts. Turns out the temp agency Victoria's assistant used has some questionable hiring practices. They'll likely lose the plaza's business, which means they'll lose half their client base. He played with a strand of her hair, wrapping it around his finger. Jennifer Costas was contacted by a lawyer this morning. She's been offered a very generous scholarship to finish her theater degree, along with a stipend for living expenses. In exchange, she'll make a statement clarifying that she was hired to cause a scene last night and identifying who paid her. Will she do it? The scholarship is $50,000 and the stipend is $2,000 a month. She's currently working 2 jobs to cover tuition. Adrian's smile was thin. She'll do it. Lena was quiet for a moment, processing. What happens to Victoria? That depends on how smart she is. If she's smart, she'll fade into the background, stop attending events where you might be present, and accept that her influence in our social circle is finished. If she's not smart, he shrugged. I have more pressure I can apply. You're destroying her life. I'm applying consequences to her actions. There's a difference. Is there? Adrian's hand settled on her stomach, feeling for the baby's movement. She tried to destroy yours. She wanted you so humiliated, so broken, that you'd convince me to end our marriage. She wanted to remove you from my life by making sure you couldn't survive in my world. His eyes found hers. I'm making sure she can't do that again. To you or anyone else. This is what you do, Lena said slowly. This is your business, not real estate or investments. This, power. Power is the business. Real estate and investments are just the tools. He paused. Does that bother you? It should have. A month ago, it would have. But Lena thought about standing in that bathroom, listening to women tear her apart. Thought about wine spreading across her dress while people laughed. Thought about apologizing for humiliation she didn't cause. No, she said. It doesn't bother me. Good. Adrian kissed her, slow and thorough. Now go eat breakfast. You're feeding 2 people. Lena ate. Then she showered, dressed in clothes that felt normal, leggings, a sweater, no wine stains or judgment. When she came back to the living room, Adrian was on his phone again, but he ended the call when he saw her. We're going out, he said. Where? Shopping. Adrian, I don't need a... Not for you. For me. I need a new tuxedo. The one from last night is ruined. He grabbed his wallet and keys. And while we're out, you're going to pick a dress. A real one. Something that costs enough that every woman who sees it will know exactly what they're looking at. I don't want to go back to those events. I'm not asking you to. But if we do, you'll walk in wearing something that makes a statement. He opened the door, holding it for her. The statement is, she belongs here. And anyone who disagrees can deal with me. They took the town car to Fifth Avenue. Adrian guided her into boutiques where dresses started at 5 figures and salespeople treated her like royalty because Adrian Vale's credit card meant something in their world. Lena tried on gowns that felt like costumes, looked at price tags that made her nauseous, and finally selected something simple. Black, floor length, maternity cut, but elegant. That one, Adrian said when she emerged from the dressing room. It's $12,000. It fits you. Adrian. Lena. He stood coming over to where she stood in front of the mirror. His hand settled on her hips, his chin on her shoulder, both of them reflected back. Let me do this. Let me give you armor when you need it. She looked at their reflection. A small woman in an expensive dress. A tall man who'd spent the night dismantling someone's life because they'd hurt her. They didn't look like they fit together, but maybe that was the point. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They bought the dress and shoes to match, and a clutch that cost more than her old monthly rent. Adrian handed over his card without blinking, like spending $20,000 was equivalent to buying coffee. On the way home, his phone rang. Marcus, according to the caller ID. Adrian answered, listened, his expression shifting. "When?" A pause. "Send me the address. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. He ended the call, leaning forward to speak to the driver. "Change of plans. Head to the plaza." "What's wrong?" Lena asked. "Victoria's at the hotel. Apparently she's trying to do damage control, talking to Catherine Sterling about last night's incident." Adrian's smile was sharp. "Perfect timing. I'm coming with you." "Lena, I'm coming with you," she repeated. "If we're making statements, let's make them together." Adrian studied her for a moment, then he nodded. "All right, together." The car pulled up outside the plaza 15 minutes later. Adrian helped Lena out, his hand secure on her back as they walked through the entrance. The lobby was busy with weekend guests, tourists snapping photos, business travelers checking in. Marcus met them near the elevators, a compact man in his 40s with military posture and eyes that tracked everything. "They're in the garden terrace, Sterling and Ashford, private table." "Good." Adrian looked at Lena. "You ready?" "No, but let's do it anyway." They walked through the lobby to the restaurant, a glass-walled space overlooking Central Park. Catherine Sterling sat at a corner table with Victoria, both women leaning in close, deep in conversation. They looked up as Adrian approached, Victoria's face going pale. "Adrian," Catherine said, surprise coloring her voice. "I didn't expect us. We need to talk." Adrian's voice carried just enough to make nearby tables glance over. "About last night." "Of course. Please, sit. I was just discussing the incident with Victoria. Such an unfortunate situation. I've already fired the staff member responsible, Jennifer Costas." Adrian remained standing, his hand still on Lena's back, who was hired 3 weeks ago on Victoria's recommendation and paid $5,000 to create a scene that would humiliate my wife. Silence dropped like a hammer. Catherine's expression shifted from polite interest to something harder. "That's a serious accusation," she said carefully. "It's a fact." Adrian pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. "I have bank records showing the transfer from Victoria's personal account to Jennifer's. I have text messages between Victoria's assistant and Jennifer outlining exactly what was expected. I have Jennifer's signed statement confirming that she was hired specifically to target Lena." He set the phone on the table, screen facing Catherine. She looked down, her face going carefully blank as she read. "Victoria," Catherine said quietly, "is this true?" "It's—" Victoria's voice cracked. She cleared her throat, trying again. "It's a misunderstanding. I was trying to help. That woman clearly didn't belong there, and I thought if we could just—" "You thought you could orchestrate a public humiliation," Adrian interrupted, "in a room full of witnesses, at an event meant to raise money for children's literacy. You thought you could target my pregnant wife and face no consequences." "She's making you look ridiculous," Victoria snapped, composure breaking. "Everyone sees it. Adrian Vale married to some clinic nurse from Queens? It's embarrassing. I was doing you a favor by assaulting my wife." "It was wine, not assault. It was planned, paid for, and executed with the sole purpose of causing harm. That's assault. And if you want, we can have this conversation with the police instead of over brunch." Victoria's face flushed red. "You can't be serious." "Try me." Catherine Sterling set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. "Victoria, I think you should leave." "Catherine, now, before this becomes worse than it already is." Victoria stood, her chair scraping loud against tile. She looked between Adrian and Lena, her expression twisting into something ugly. "You think you've won," she said to Lena. "You think because he's defending you now, that makes you legitimate. But you'll never be one of us. You'll never belong. And eventually, Adrian will realize what everyone else already knows. You're a mistake he's too proud to correct." Maybe, Lena said, surprising herself by speaking, but I'm the mistake he chose, and you're the one he walked away from. So which one of us really lost? Victoria's mouth opened, closed. She grabbed her purse and walked out, heels clicking sharp against the floor. Catherine watched her go, then turned to Adrian and Lena. Her expression was unreadable. I owe you an apology, she said finally. Last night should never have happened. Not in my event, not under my watch. If I'd known... You didn't know, Adrian said, but now you do. And I trust that Victoria's involvement with the foundation will be reconsidered. She's already been removed from the board, as of this morning. Catherine's eyes moved to Lena. Mrs. Vale, I'm truly sorry for what you experienced. Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. They left the restaurant together, walked through the lobby, stepped back out into afternoon sunlight. The car waited at the curb. Adrian helped Lena inside, then climbed in after her. As they pulled away from the plaza, Lena felt something shift in her chest. Not quite triumph. The humiliation still hurt. The words still stung. But something else. Something that felt like standing upright after being bent double for too long. You're smiling, Adrian said. Am I? You are. Lena realized he was right. I told Victoria she lost. You did, very effectively. I've never... She paused. I don't usually talk back. I just take it and apologize and try to disappear. I noticed. But this time I didn't. I stood there in $12,000 shoes and told her she lost. Adrian pulled her close, kissing her temple. You're learning. Learning what? That you don't have to disappear, that you're allowed to take up space, that people like Victoria only have the power you give them. His hand found hers, fingers threading together. You're stronger than you think, Lena. You always have been. You just needed a reason to show it. The car carried them home through Manhattan streets, past buildings full of people living their small, enormous lives. Lena leaned against Adrian's shoulder, feeling the baby kick, thinking about wine-stained dresses and cruel laughter, and the moment she'd stopped apologizing. She wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that ballroom yesterday. Something had broken in that moment with the wine and the judgment and the performance of humiliation. But something else had been born. And as the city moved past their windows, Lena felt the first stirring of who she might become. The doors opened at exactly 10:47 p.m. Adrian had checked his watch twice in the car ride over, once when they left the penthouse, once when they pulled up to the plaza's entrance. Lena sat beside him in silence, her hands folded in her lap, still wearing the emerald dress he'd had delivered that afternoon. The wine-stained gown from 2 nights ago was in a trash bag somewhere. She'd wanted to burn it. He'd stopped her only because accelerants and pregnant women didn't mix. You don't have to do this, she'd said while getting dressed. I know. Adrian, I mean it. What happened? It was humiliating, but it's over. We can just move on. He'd adjusted his cufflinks, not meeting her eyes. It's not over. What does that mean? It means I made some calls. The way he'd said it, flat, matter-of-fact, had made her stomach drop. She knew that tone. It was the same one he used when discussing business deals that ended with someone losing everything they had. Now they stood in the plaza lobby, and Adrian's hand settled on her back as the ballroom doors opened. The same ballroom. The same chandeliers. But the energy was different tonight. Anticipation instead of celebration, tension thick enough to choke on. Catherine Sterling stood near the entrance, her smile brittle. Adrian, I wasn't sure you'd actually come. You asked me to. His voice carried no warmth. Here I am. Catherine's gaze flickered to Lena, something complicated passing behind her eyes. Yes, well, everyone's waiting inside. Shall we? The ballroom had been rearranged. Instead of round tables for dinner, rows of chairs faced a small stage where a podium stood under a spotlight. Maybe 100 people filled the seats, not the full 300 from the gala, but everyone who mattered. Lena recognized faces from that night. Senator Michaels and his wife, the Hawthorns, Judge Morrison in her pearls. And there, 3 rows back, Victoria Ashford sat between Diana Chen and Sophia Blackwell, her expression carefully neutral. Whispers started the moment they entered. Heads turned, eyes tracked them as Adrian led Lena down the center aisle toward the front row where 2 seats waited, reserved and empty. This is a mistake, Lena whispered. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. Trust me. They sat. The whispers grew louder, speculation building like pressure before a storm. Lena kept her eyes forward, focusing on the empty podium, trying not to think about what came next. Adrian had told her the basics. Catherine had called an emergency board meeting. Certain revelations had come to light. Some people needed to answer questions. But the specifics remained vague, and that vagueness terrified her more than knowing would have. Catherine took the stage, her heels clicking against hardwood. She gripped the podium like it might save her from drowning. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, she began. I know this is unusual, calling a meeting like this, but circumstances have made it necessary. 2 nights ago, at our annual gala, an incident occurred that has brought some troubling information to my attention. Lena felt the weight of eyes on her back. She forced herself not to turn around. As many of you know, Catherine continued, there was an unfortunate accident involving one of our servers and a guest. What you may not know is that following that incident, Mr. Vale contacted me with concerns about how the situation was handled. She paused, her hands tightening on the podium. Those concerns led to an internal investigation. What we found was disturbing. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Lena glanced at Adrian, but his face remained unreadable, his attention fixed on Catherine. The server who was fired that night. Her name is Maria Reyes, and she's worked for the plaza for 3 years with an exemplary record. After her termination, Mr. Vale's team conducted an independent investigation into what actually happened. Maria was not stealing from Mrs. Vale's purse. She was returning it. The room went very quiet. Mrs. Vale had left her purse at the table when she went to dance. Maria noticed it, picked it up to secure it, and was bringing it to Lost and Found when the lights went out. In the confusion, she returned to the table to put it back where she found it, not wanting Mrs. Vale to worry. That's when Mrs. Vale saw her and understandably assumed the worst. Lena's chest tightened. The girl had been trying to help, and they dragged her out like a criminal. However, Catherine's voice hardened, that's not the disturbing part. The investigation also revealed that the power outage was not an accident. Someone deliberately triggered the breaker to cause chaos and confusion. And the glass of wine that spilled on Mrs. Vale? Security footage shows it was intentionally knocked over by someone in the crowd during the commotion. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Lena's hands clenched in her lap. Who? Someone called out. Catherine's expression was stone. That's why we're here tonight, mister. Vale's security team has identified 3 individuals involved in orchestrating what amounts to a coordinated act of public humiliation against his wife. I'm going to call them forward now, and they're going to explain themselves. The air left Lena's lungs. She turned to Adrian, but he was already standing, moving to the stage. Catherine stepped aside, yielding the podium. Adrian didn't use it. He stood at the edge of the stage, hands in his pockets, and surveyed the crowd with the same expression Lena had seen him use in business meetings, calm, focused, and absolutely merciless. 2 nights ago, he said, his voice carrying without needing amplification, my pregnant wife was humiliated in front of 200 people. Wine was poured on her dress. She was made to look foolish, careless, beneath you all. And she apologized. His eyes scanned the crowd. She stood there, 6 months pregnant, covered in wine, and she apologized for existing in your space. The room held its breath. I've spent the last 48 hours figuring out who was responsible. Not because I'm vindictive, though I am, but because I wanted to understand what kind of person sees a pregnant woman and thinks, you know what? Let's destroy her evening. Let's make her feel small. Let's remind her she doesn't belong. He paused. Turns out, it's the kind of person who sits in this room. Movement in the 3rd row. Victoria Ashford had gone pale. Victoria Ashford, Adrian said, stand up. Victoria didn't move. Diana and Sophia shifted away from her like she'd become radioactive. Stand up, Adrian repeated, and this time it wasn't a request. Victoria rose slowly, her face a mask of composure that was cracking at the edges. Adrian, I don't know what you think. I think you paid the plaza's maintenance supervisor $5,000 to cut the power at exactly 10:15 p.m. I think you then signaled Diana Chen to knock over the wine glass in the confusion, and I think you did it because you believe my wife is beneath you. His voice remained level, conversational, almost. I have the bank transfer. I have the text messages. I have Diana's confirmation. She gave it this morning in exchange for me not pursuing charges. Diana had turned gray. Sophia was staring straight ahead like she could will herself invisible. It was a joke, Victoria said, her voice breaking. Adrian, for God's sake, it was meant to be. You didn't think I'd find out, or you didn't think I'd care. I didn't think you'd burn everything down over some woman you barely know. The words echoed in the sudden silence. Victoria seemed to realize what she'd said, her hand rising to her mouth too late. Some woman I barely know. Adrian's smile was sharp enough to cut. You're right, Victoria. We've only been together 8 months. I've only seen her save 3 lives, deliver 2 babies, and hold my hand through a panic attack I had at 2 a.m. when I couldn't breathe because my father's legacy felt like drowning. You're absolutely right. I barely know her. Victoria's face crumpled. Adrian, please, sit down. He dismissed her with the glance, already moving on. Margaret Rothschild, you're up. Margaret, the severe woman with sharp cheekbones, stood without being asked twice. Her spine was straight, her chin up, but Lena could see her hands shaking. I didn't pay anyone, Margaret said coldly. I wasn't involved in their juvenile scheme. No, you weren't, Adrian agreed. But you knew about it. Victoria told you the night before. You could have warned my wife, could have stopped it, could have done literally anything except what you did do, which was watch it happen and laugh. I didn't laugh. You smiled, close enough. Adrian pulled out his phone, tapped something, and Margaret's voice filled the ballroom from the speakers. Oh, this is going to be magnificent. The little nobody from Queens, humiliated in front of everyone who matters. Adrian will finally see what a mistake he made. Margaret's face went from pale to crimson. That was a private conversation. Private conversations don't exist anymore. Not when they're about hurting people I love. Adrian pocketed his phone. You want to know the thing about power, Margaret? Real power isn't about what you have. It's about what you're willing to use. And I'm willing to use everything. He turned to face the full crowd. Here's what's going to happen. The Sterling Foundation is currently in the middle of securing a $50 million grant from the Ashford Family Trust. Victoria's family money dispersed at her discretion. That grant is now dead. Victoria, your trust will instead donate that $50 million to a children's hospital in Queens, the one near where my wife grew up. You'll announce it publicly, you'll smile while you do it, and you'll thank Lena for the inspiration. Victoria swayed on her feet. Adrian, that's my family's legacy. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to play games with mine. You can't do this. I already did. Your trust lawyer is a man named David Whitmore. I called him this morning. We had a very productive conversation about fiduciary responsibility and the consequences of trust board members engaging in criminal harassment. He agreed that redirecting the funds was the only way to avoid a very public lawsuit that would drag your family name through every newspaper in the city. Adrian's eyes were ice. So yes, Victoria, I can do this. And I have. Victoria collapsed back into her seat, Diana catching her before she fell completely. Tears streamed down Victoria's face, her perfect composure shattered. Adrian turned to Margaret. You're on the board of 3 companies I have controlling interest in. As of this morning, you're removed from all 3. You'll receive formal notification tomorrow. Margaret's mouth opened, closed. On what grounds? On the grounds that I own the companies, and I don't want you there anymore. That's how this works, Margaret. You pretended you had power because you knew the right people, went to the right schools, married the right man. But I actually have power. And you just learned the difference. He looked at Sophia, who'd been trying to disappear into her seat. Sophia Blackwell. You didn't participate in the wine incident, but you did participate in the bathroom conversation where you and your friends discussed my wife like she was a piece of trash that wandered in from the street. I was gonna let it go. Talking shit isn't a crime. But then I found out your husband's company is bidding on a city contract for the new Brooklyn waterfront development. $15 million. His firm needs it to stay solvent. Sophia's face went white. Please. The contract requires approval from multiple city departments. I know people in all of them. Your husband's not getting that contract, Sophia. His firm is going to struggle, maybe fold. And when it does, I want you to remember why. My husband didn't do anything wrong, Sophia's voice broke. He wasn't even at the gala. No, but you were. And you made the choice to be cruel to someone who'd done nothing to you. Adrian's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. Actions have consequences. You're learning that now. Senator Michaels stood up in the back. Adrian, this is going too far. You're destroying people's lives over a spilled glass of wine. I'm destroying people's lives over calculated cruelty, Adrian corrected. There's a difference. The wine was just the method. The cruelty was the point. You can't just... Michaels started. I can. That's what you people don't understand. I've spent 20 years building power in this city while you sat in your comfortable positions thinking you were untouchable. You're not. Nobody is. He scanned the crowd. Anyone else want to challenge me on this? Anyone else want to explain why they think humiliating my wife is acceptable behavior that shouldn't have consequences? Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Good. Adrian stepped down from the stage, walking back to where Lena sat frozen. He offered his hand. Come on, we're leaving. Lena took his hand, let him pull her up. Her legs were shaking. Around them, faces stared, some shocked, some horrified, some carefully blank. Victoria was still crying. Margaret looked like she'd been carved from ice. Sophia had her face in her hands. They walked up the center aisle. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The crowd parted like water, creating space. Avoiding contact like proximity might make them the next target. They were almost to the doors when Catherine called out, Adrian, wait! He stopped, turned. Catherine stood at the base of the stage, her hands clasped in front of her. The server, Maria Reyes, we've offered her her job back, with a formal apology and compensation for the termination. She starts again Monday if she wants. She doesn't want to work for you anymore, Adrian said. She's been hired by one of my restaurants. Better pay, better hours, better management. But I appreciate the gesture. Catherine's expression flickered with something that might have been embarrassment. And the foundation? The foundation will be fine. This was never about you, Catherine. You run a good organization that does real work. That's why the $50 million is going to a hospital instead of disappearing into legal fees. I didn't know, Catherine said quietly, about Victoria's plan. If you had, you would have stopped it. I know. Adrian's voice softened fractionally. But you created an environment where people like Victoria felt comfortable doing it in the first place. That's worth thinking about. He turned, and this time they made it to the doors without interruption. The lobby was empty except for a security guard who wisely found something fascinating to look at on his phone. The night air hit them as they stepped outside, cool and clean after the suffocating atmosphere of the ballroom. The town car waited at the curb. Adrian opened the door for Lena, but she didn't get in. She stood on the sidewalk, staring back at the plaza's golden windows, trying to process what had just happened. You destroyed them, she said finally. Yes. Victoria's family legacy, Margaret's career, Sophia's husband's company. Yes. Adrian, she turned to face him. I don't even know what that was. Excessive? Brutal? Necessary. He met her eyes without flinching. They hurt you, Lena. They went out of their way to make you feel worthless in front of people who judge you for it, and they did it because they thought there wouldn't be consequences. I made sure there were. By ruining their lives? By making them understand that cruelty isn't free. That you can't just tear someone apart for entertainment and walk away clean. He stepped closer. I know how this looks. I know I probably seem vindictive and excessive and maybe a little crazy, but I don't care. Nobody hurts you and gets away with it. Not in my city, not anywhere. Lena's eyes burned. I didn't need you to save me. I know you didn't. You're strong enough to survive this world without me, but you shouldn't have to. His hand came up, cupping her face. I'm not asking you to be grateful. I'm not even asking you to approve. I'm just telling you that this is who I am. When someone I love is hurt, I hurt them back. That's the deal. That's not a deal. That's a warning. Maybe it's both. They stood there on the sidewalk, the city humming around them, the plaza's lights casting shadows across Adrian's face. Inside, 100 people were probably still processing what had happened, recalculating power structures, figuring out where they stood in a hierarchy that had just violently reshuffled. The $50 million, Lena said. The hospital in Queens. It'll fund a new pediatric wing, better equipment, more staff, expanded hours. Kids who couldn't afford decent health care will get it now. Adrian's thumb brushed across her cheek. Victoria wanted to use her money to feel superior to people like you. Now it's going to help people like who you used to be. That feels like justice to me. You planned all of this. The investigation, the recordings, the board positions, the city contracts. You had it mapped out before we even got here tonight. I made calls. People owed me favors. I called them in. That's not calling in favors, Adrian. That's orchestrating revenge. Yes. No apology in his voice. It is. Lena didn't know what to feel. Part of her was horrified by the calculated destruction she'd just witnessed. Part of her was grateful that someone finally stood up for her instead of expecting her to quietly absorb cruelty. And part of her, a part she didn't want to examine too closely, was satisfied. Victoria and Margaret and Sophia had tried to break her, and now they were the broken ones. I need to go home, she said. Okay. They got in the car. The driver pulled away from the plaza, heading uptown toward the penthouse. Lena watched the city slide past the window. Lights and movement and millions of people living lives that had nothing to do with what had just happened. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably still crying. Margaret was probably making angry phone calls. Sophia was probably trying to figure out how to tell her husband that his company was doomed because his wife had been mean to the wrong person's pregnant wife. Do you regret it? Lena asked without looking at Adrian. No. Not even a little? Not even slightly. He reached over, taking her hand. I know you want me to say I went too far. That I should have handled it differently, been more measured, shown more mercy. But I can't say that, Lena. I won't. Those women tried to humiliate you out of pure cruelty. They deserve what they got. And the senator? He was just defending them. He was protecting power. That's what people like Michaels do. They maintain the status quo because it benefits them. He needed to learn that the status quo shifted the moment he let his friends attack my wife. Lena turned to look at him. In the passing streetlights, his face was all angles and shadows, beautiful and hard. You scared me tonight. That made him pause. Scared you? Not of you, never of you, but of what you're capable of. The way you dismantled those people's lives like you were filing paperwork. It was efficient and thorough and completely terrifying. I'm not going to apologize for having power. I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying, she struggled to find the words. I knew you were successful. I knew you had money and influence, but I didn't really understand what that meant until tonight. You didn't just punish them, Adrian. You erased them. And you did it in front of everyone so they'd all know not to cross you. Yes, he said simply. That was the point. Doesn't that bother you, being that ruthless? He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. You want the truth? No. It doesn't bother me. Maybe it should. Maybe a better person would feel guilty about destroying Victoria's family legacy or tanking Sophia's husband's company. But I'm not a better person, Lena. I'm the person who watched his wife apologize for being humiliated and decided that wasn't going to stand. The car pulled up to their building. The doorman rushed to open Lena's door, greeting them both with a professional smile that didn't quite hide his curiosity. They rode the elevator in silence, rising 40 stories above the city to the penthouse that still didn't quite feel like home to Lena. Inside, she kicked off her heels and headed straight for the bedroom. Adrian followed, loosening his tie as he walked. Lena unzipped her dress, the expensive emerald one that fit perfectly, and made her look like she belonged in his world, and let it pool on the floor. She pulled on one of Adrian's old t-shirts and a pair of sweatpants, transforming back into someone recognizable. You okay? Adrian asked from the doorway. I don't know. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands on her belly where the baby was kicking. I think so? Maybe. Ask me tomorrow. He crossed the room, kneeling in front of her so they were eye level. I need you to understand something. What I did tonight, that's who I am. That's how I operate. When someone threatens something I care about, I eliminate the threat. It's not noble or heroic. It's just how I'm built. I know. And I need you to be okay with that. Not happy about it, not celebrating it, just okay with it. Because this is the life you married into, Lena. Power and consequences and people who will always be looking for weakness to exploit. His hand settled on her knees. If you can't live with that, if you need me to be someone softer, or kinder, or more forgiving, you need to tell me now. Lena looked at him. This man who'd just demolished 3 people's lives without breaking a sweat, who held her hand like she was made of glass, who'd bought an entire building because her landlord had been cruel. He was right. This was who he was. Ruthless and protective in equal measure, incapable of half measures or forgiveness when someone he loved was hurt. I married you knowing you were dangerous, she said slowly. I just didn't realize how dangerous until tonight. And now that you know? She touched his face, her palm against his jaw. Now I know that Victoria Ashford is going to think twice before she's cruel to anyone ever again. And Margaret Rothschild is going to remember that status doesn't make you untouchable. And Sophia Blackwell is going to understand that words have weight. Her thumb brushed across his cheekbone. So, yeah, I'm okay with it. Something shifted in his expression, relief, maybe, or gratitude. You're sure? I'm sure that I love you. I'm sure that watching you defend me tonight was terrifying and overwhelming and also kind of incredible. And I'm sure that our kid is going to have the most protective father on the planet. She managed a smile. Also slightly terrifying. Adrian laughed, the sound surprising them both. Our kid is going to be so confused. Nurse mother who helps everyone, crime boss father who destroys anyone who looks at her wrong. Former crime boss, Lena corrected. Mostly former. Adrian. Mostly former, he repeated, grinning now. I'm legitimate these days. Legal businesses, clean money, tax returns filed on time. But old habits die hard, and the connections don't disappear just because I'm not actively running operations anymore. That's comforting. It should be. Those connections are what let me dismantle Victoria's trust fund and Margaret's board positions in 48 hours. You want a dangerous husband who can protect you, or a safe one who can't? He stood, pulling her up with him. Can't have both. I want you, Lena said. Dangerous, protective, excessive, and all. He kissed her then, slow and deep, his hands careful around her belly. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. No one's ever going to make you apologize for existing again, he said quietly. I promise you that. You can't promise that. You can't control everyone. Watch me. And looking into his eyes, gray-blue and absolutely serious, Lena believed him. The threat arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the plaza. Lena was in the kitchen making coffee, decaf because the baby apparently had opinions about caffeine, when Adrian's phone started ringing. Not his regular phone. The other one, the black one he kept in his office safe and only answered when the caller ID showed specific numbers. She heard his voice from down the hall, low and controlled. Then silence. Then footsteps, quick and purposeful. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, already pulling on his jacket. I need to go out. Now? Adrian, we have the doctor's appointment at 10. I'll be back before then. He was checking his pockets, wallet, keys, the black phone. Marcus is downstairs. He's coming up to stay with you until I get back. Lena set down her mug. What's going on? Probably nothing, just being cautious. Adrian. He stopped moving, met her eyes. Whatever she saw there made her stomach drop. Tell me, she said. Someone spray-painted a message on one of my restaurant's back walls last night. Security footage shows 3 guys, late 20s, faces covered. The message said Vale's wife isn't safe. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was reading a grocery list. It's probably just talk, intimidation, but I'm not taking chances. The coffee smell turned her stomach. Someone threatened me. Someone threatened the idea of you. There's a difference. He crossed to her, his hands settling on her shoulders. Listen to me. This happens sometimes. I make moves, I step on toes, people push back. It's usually noise, people trying to scare me into backing off. It almost never goes further than that. Almost never. Almost never, he confirmed. But until I know which this is, Marcus stays with you. He's good, Lena. Former Secret Service. He'll keep you safe. And you? I'm going to have a conversation with some people who might know who's feeling brave enough to make threats. His jaw tightened. They won't be feeling brave for long. The doorbell rang. Adrian went to answer it, returning with a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite. 6'4", broad-shouldered, with the kind of alert stillness that came from military training. Marcus nodded to Lena, his expression professionally neutral. Mrs. Vale, I'll be in the living room. You won't even know I'm here. Except I will know you're here, Lena said. Because you're here because someone wants to hurt me. Someone wants to scare your husband, Marcus corrected. You're just the leverage. It's different. That's not as comforting as you think it is. Adrian kissed her forehead. 2 hours, 3 maximum. I'll be back before the appointment. To Marcus, nobody comes in. I don't care who they claim to be. Understood. Then Adrian was gone, and Lena was alone with a bodyguard in her own home, trying not to think about 3 men in masks spray painting threats in the dark. She lasted 15 minutes before pulling out her phone and calling the one person who'd understand. Lena? Sarah's voice came through tinny and surprised. Hey, I thought you'd forgotten about us working-class people now that you're living the penthouse life. Sarah, I need... Lena's voice cracked. The teasing tone vanished immediately. What happened? Are you okay? Is the baby... The baby's fine. I'm fine. But someone spray-painted a threat about me on Adrian's property last night, and he's gone to have a conversation with people, and there's a bodyguard in my living room, and I don't know what to do. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm coming over. You're working, Mom. I'm taking a break. Give me 40 minutes. Sarah arrived in 35, somehow talking her way past building security and Marcus both. She swept into the penthouse wearing scrubs and carrying 2 bags from the bodega on 3rd Avenue, candy, chips, the trashy magazines Lena used to read during night shifts. Comfort food, Sarah announced, dumping everything on the counter. And before you start, yes, I know you're eating healthy for the baby, but stress is also bad for the baby. So really, these chips are medicinal. Lena laughed despite herself. That's not how nutrition works. That's exactly how nutrition works. I'm a nurse. I would know. Sarah pulled her into a hug, fierce and tight. You scared the hell out of me on the phone. I scared myself. They settled on the couch. Marcus had tactfully disappeared into the guest room, door cracked just enough to hear if anything went wrong. Sarah opened a bag of sour cream and onion chips, shoving them at Lena. Okay, talk. What's actually happening? Lena explained. The threat. Adrian's reaction. The casual way he'd said almost never, like the possibility of real danger was just another Tuesday morning complication. Sarah listened, eating chips and occasionally swearing under her breath. So your husband is out there doing what exactly? Breaking kneecaps? Making people sleep with the fishes? He said, having a conversation. Right, because that's what powerful men with criminal connections do. Have conversations. Sarah shook her head. Lena, I love you, and I'm not judging, but your husband is scary. I know. Like, really scary. The kind of scary where people spray paint threats because they're too terrified to do anything direct. I know, Lena repeated, but he's also the kind of scary where I'm safe, where people who hurt me face consequences, where... She stopped, trying to find words that didn't sound insane. He's dangerous, but he's dangerous for me. Does that make sense? In a Stockholm Syndrome kind of way, sure. Sarah. I'm kidding. Mostly. Sarah studied her friend's face. You love him. Like, actually love him. Not just married him because you're pregnant love him. I do. Even though he's currently out there doing crime boss things to people? He's not a crime boss anymore. He's legitimate. Uh-huh. And I'm sure the bodyguard in your guest room is just for show. Sarah sighed. Look, I'm not saying don't love him. I'm saying be careful. Men who solve problems with violence and intimidation don't usually stop just because they promise to. That pattern tends to expand. He's never been violent with me. That's not what I mean, and you know it. I mean, Sarah gestured vaguely. You're living in a world where people spray paint threats, and your husband keeps a special phone for dangerous calls, and you need armed protection to be in your own home. That's not normal, Lena. That's not safe. Nowhere safe. At least here I have someone willing to fight for me. Sarah's expression softened. You've always had people willing to fight for you. You just chose the one with the most firepower. They sat in silence for a moment, the chips gradually disappearing. Lena's phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. Situation handled. Heading to a second location. Still making the appointment. Situation handled, Lena read aloud. What does that even mean? It means someone's having a really bad morning, Sarah said, and it's probably not Adrian. The second location turned out to be a warehouse in Red Hook. Adrian had been there once before, 2 years ago, when a shipment of very legal, very legitimate imported goods had mysteriously disappeared between the dock and his distribution center. The problem had been resolved quietly, and the warehouse owner, a man named Dmitry with ties to the Russian community in Brighton Beach, had been apologetic and professional. Today, Dmitry looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Mr. Vale? He stood as Adrian entered, flanked by two of his own men who looked nervous. Thank you for coming. I tried to call earlier, but I was busy. Adrian's voice was flat. You said you had information about the threat. Yes. Please sit. But Dmitry gestured to a makeshift office area, a desk, some chairs, papers scattered like he'd been working all night. I heard about the spray paint. Word travels fast in certain circles, and I heard rumors about who might be responsible. Adrian sat. His two men, Carlos and James, both ex-military, both loyal, positioned themselves by the door. I'm listening. Dmitry poured vodka into a glass with shaking hands, didn't offer any to Adrian. There's a crew working out of Staten Island. Young guys, mostly. They've been making noise about how you've gotten soft, how you're out of the game and vulnerable. Their leader, his name is Alexei Volkov. He lost a cousin in a territory dispute 7 years ago. Your territory, your dispute. I don't remember every body from 7 years ago, Dmitry. This one you might. Viktor Volkov. He was running protection rackets in Brooklyn, moving into areas you controlled. You made an example of him. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something cold settled behind his eyes. I remember Victor. He put 2 of my people in the hospital, so I put him in the ground. That was business. To you, maybe. To Alexei, it was family. Dmitry drank his vodka in one swallow. He's been building up his crew, talking about payback. When he heard you got married, had a baby coming, he saw an opportunity. Make you hurt the way he hurt. By threatening my wife. By threatening your wife, Dmitry confirmed. But Mr. Vale, I don't think it's just talk. Alexei is young and angry and stupid. Dangerous combination. He has maybe 15 guys loyal to him, and they're all convinced you're too legitimate now to fight back properly. They think they can push you. Adrian stood, began pacing. Carlos and James exchanged glances but stayed quiet. Where is he? I don't know exactly, but I know he drinks at a bar in Stapleton. The Iron Anchor. He's there most nights around 9, 10 o'clock. Dmitry hesitated. Mr. Vale, I'm telling you this because I respect you and because I don't want more bodies on Staten Island. But I'm also telling you, be careful. Alexei is expecting you to come after him. He wants a war. Don't give him one. I'm not going to war, Adrian said. War is expensive and messy and draws attention. I'm going to solve a problem. That's what I'm afraid of. Dmitry poured another vodka. 7 years ago, you could solve problems however you wanted. Nobody questioned it. But now, you have a wife, a baby coming, a public profile. You can't just make bodies disappear anymore. Watch me. Adrian, I appreciate the information, Dmitry, and the concern. Adrian pulled out his wallet, withdrew $500 bills, set them on the desk. For your trouble and your discretion. I don't want your money. I want your word you won't do something that brings the FBI down on all of us. Adrian looked at him for a long moment. You have my word I'll handle this quietly. That's all I'm offering. He left the warehouse with Carlos and James, climbing into the SUV parked outside. Carlos drove while Adrian sat in back, phone already in his hand. We going to Staten Island? James asked. Eventually. First, I need to make some calls. Adrian dialed a number from memory. It rang twice before connecting. Mitchell, I need a favor. Detective Mitchell Reeves had been on Adrian's payroll for 6 years. Not dirty exactly, just pragmatic about the gray areas between law and order. His voice came through cautious. Vale, I'm at work. This better be important. How fast can you get me everything on Alexei Volkov? Staten Island crew, mid-20s, running protection and probably some drug distribution on the side. Why do I feel like I'm about to read about a tragic accident in the paper? Because you're perceptive. How fast, Mitchell? A sigh. Give me 2 hours. But Adrian, listen, if this kid ends up dead, I can't protect you. The department's been watching you since that business with the Ashford Trust hit the news. You're on their radar. I'm always on their radar. 2 hours. Adrian hung up, immediately dialing another number. This one rang 4 times before a woman answered, her voice professional and cold. Vol, it's been a while. Elena, I need information on Viktor Volkov's family, specifically his cousin Alexei. Elena Volkov, no relation despite the shared last name, ran the best private investigation firm in New York. She'd done work for Adrian before, always discreet, always thorough. Victor's cousin, let me guess. Someone's making noise about old grudges? Someone spray-painted a threat about my wife. I'm told Alexei is responsible, and you want me to confirm it. I want you to tell me everything about him. Where he lives, where he drinks, who he's sleeping with, what he ate for breakfast. I want his life in a file. That'll cost you. I don't care what it costs. I need it today. Today's expensive. Elena. She was quiet for a moment. You're going to kill him. I'm going to solve a problem. That's yes in Vale speak. Another pause. Fine. But if this blows back, I never heard from you, and the fee is $50,000. Done. Send the file to my secure email. He made 3 more calls to a judge who owed him a favor, to a lawyer who specialized in making inconvenient questions disappear, and to a man named Vincent who didn't have a last name and didn't need one. Vincent's specialty was cleaning up messes. Adrian had used him twice before, both times for problems that required permanent solutions. I might need you tonight, Adrian told him. Staten Island. Details to follow. Rate's gone up, Vincent said. Inflation. I don't care about the rate. I care about discretion. You'll get both. Send me the address when you're ready. By the time they pulled up to the penthouse, Adrian had a plan forming, brutal and efficient, the kind of plan that would end Alexei Volkov's threats permanently. He checked his watch. 9:47 a.m. Just enough time to clean up and make the doctor's appointment. Lena was waiting in the living room when he walked in, Sarah beside her, both women looking up with identical expressions of worry and relief. Hey, Adrian said, trying for casual. Sorry that took longer than expected. You look exhausted, Lena observed. I'm fine, just had to handle some things. He glanced at Sarah. Thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here. Sarah stood gathering her stuff. Yeah, well, someone has to keep her from spiraling. That's my job. She hugged Lena. Call me later. And Lena, be careful. After Sarah left, Lena turned to Adrian with her arms crossed. What happened? I found out who made the threat. I'm handling it. Handling it how? Do you really want to know? She considered that. Probably not, but I'm asking anyway. Adrian sat beside her, took her hands. There's a crew in Staten Island, young guys with more anger than sense. Their leader lost family in a business dispute years ago. He's decided revenge sounds like a good idea. So I'm going to explain why it's not. Explain how? With words, or with the kind of explanation that involves Vincent? Adrian's eyes narrowed. How do you know about Vincent? I hear things. You're not as subtle as you think when you're on the phone. She squeezed his hands. Adrian, I don't want you to kill someone over me. I'm not killing anyone over you. I'm eliminating a threat to my family. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're about to commit murder because someone spray-painted mean words on a wall. They threatened you, Lena. Not mean words. A direct threat. And if I don't respond, it tells every crew in the 5 boroughs that I'm weak, that my wife is vulnerable, that they can come after what's mine without consequence. His voice hardened. I can't let that stand. So you're going to prove you're not weak by killing a 20-something kid who's angry about his cousin? I'm going to prove I'm not weak by showing what happens when people threaten my family. And yes, if that kid happens to be the one who made the threat, then he's going to learn a very permanent lesson. Lena pulled her hands back. This is what Sarah was talking about. This pattern of solving everything with violence. It doesn't stop, does it? It just escalates. This isn't escalation. This is protection. It's murder, Adrian. Premeditated, planned murder. And you're sitting here telling me about it like it's just another Tuesday morning problem to solve. Because in my world it is. He stood, frustration bleeding through his control. You want me to be different? Fine. I'll call Alexei, invite him to coffee, Ask him politely to stop threatening to hurt you. Maybe we'll become friends. Maybe he'll decide on his own that revenge isn't worth it." His voice dripped sarcasm. "Or maybe he'll take my softness as weakness and escalate until someone actually gets hurt. Which do you think is more likely?" "I think there's a middle ground between coffee and murder." "There isn't. Not in this world. You either protect what's yours with everything you have or you lose it." He checked his watch. "We need to leave for the doctor in 10 minutes. Can we table this conversation until after we confirm our baby is healthy?" Lena wanted to keep arguing, wanted to make him understand that violence wasn't the only answer, that there had to be another way. But she also knew that look in his eyes, the one that said his mind was made up, his plan was set, and nothing she said would change it. "Fine," she said quietly. "But Adrian, if you kill this kid, if you go to Staten Island tonight and make him disappear, I need you to know something." "What?" "I'll still love you, but I won't like you very much." The words hit harder than she'd expected them to. Adrian's expression cracked just for a moment, showing something raw underneath. Then he locked it down, his face smoothing into the mask he wore when business needed handling. "I can live with that," he said. They went to the doctor's appointment in silence. The examination room was too bright, the paper on the table crinkling every time Lena shifted position. Dr. Reeves, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and efficient hands, squirted cold gel on Lena's belly and pressed the ultrasound wand against her skin. "Let's see how baby's doing," she said cheerfully. "Everything feeling okay? Movement normal?" "Yes," Lena answered. "Very active, actually, especially at night." "That's good. Nice strong kicks." The doctor moved the wand, watching the screen. "And there we go. There's your baby, looking perfect. Heart rate is excellent, 142. Growth is right on track for 27 weeks. On the screen, their baby moved, a hand curling, a foot kicking, the profile of a face that looked impossibly human and impossibly small. Adrian leaned closer, his hand finding Lena's automatically. "Can you tell what it is?" he asked. Dr. Reeves smiled. "Do you want to know?" Lena glanced at Adrian. They'd discussed this before. Wait and be surprised, or find out now and have time to prepare. They'd never made a decision. "Yeah," Adrian said. "Tell us." "You're having a girl." The room went very quiet. On the screen, their daughter kicked again, oblivious to the weight of that revelation. A girl. A daughter. Someone who would have Lena's vulnerability and Adrian's dangerous protection built into her DNA. "A girl," Lena repeated softly. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. "We're having a daughter." "Congratulations," Dr. Reeves said, continuing her examination. "Everything looks great. I'll see you again in 3 weeks." They left with printouts of the ultrasound, little gray images that somehow contained an entire future. In the car, Adrian held one of the photos, staring at it like it might disappear. "A daughter," he said again. "Are you okay?" "I don't know." He looked at Lena. "I was terrified when you told me you were pregnant, terrified of screwing up, of being like my father, of passing on all the broken parts of me. But I could handle a son. I understood boys, understood how to raise them in my world. But a daughter?" His voice cracked. "She's going to be small and vulnerable and trusting, and the world is going to try to break her, and I won't be able to stop it. You'll protect her, that's what you do. I can't protect her from everything, not forever." He set the photo down. "But I can make sure anyone who tries to hurt her knows exactly what the consequences are. I can build a world where people think twice before they come after what's mine, even if that means—" "Don't," Lena cut him off. "Don't tell me you're going to kill Alexei Volkov for our daughter's future. Don't make it about her. It is about her. It's about showing the world that my family is untouchable, that threats have consequences." He met her eyes. "You think I want to do this? You think I enjoy having these conversations? I don't, but I'm not going to apologize for doing what's necessary. Then I'm not going to apologize for hating it." They drove home in silence, the ultrasound photos on the seat between them like a fragile bridge neither could quite cross. That night, Adrian kissed Lena goodbye at 8:30. "Where are you going?" she asked, even though she knew. "To solve a problem." "Adrian, stay here. Marcus is outside. Don't open the door for anyone." He cupped her face. I love you. I'll be back before morning. Then he was gone, and Lena was alone with the knowledge that somewhere in Staten Island, a young man was about to die because he'd threatened the wrong person's wife. She sat on the couch, one hand on her belly, where her daughter kicked, and wondered what kind of world they were bringing a girl into, what kind of man her husband really was, underneath the protection and the promises. What kind of woman she was becoming, loving someone capable of such calculated violence. The hours stretched. Lena tried to sleep, couldn't. Tried to read, couldn't focus. At midnight, her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. It's handled. Heading home. That was all. No details. No explanation. Just confirmation that whatever had needed doing was done. He walked through the door at 1:15 a.m., his clothes clean, his hands steady, no visible evidence of whatever had happened. But Lena saw it in his eyes, the cold efficiency of a man who'd solved a problem permanently. It's over, he said. Did you kill him? No. Adrian poured himself whiskey, drank it in one swallow. I didn't have to. Turned out Alexei is more pragmatic than I thought. We had a conversation. He understood that continuing to make threats would be bad for his health and his business. He's leaving New York. Tonight. Permanently. Lena studied his face, trying to read truth from lie. You're telling me you just talked to him and he agreed to leave? I'm telling you the threat is over. How we got there isn't important. It's important to me. Adrian poured another whiskey. Fine. You want details? I went to the Iron Anchor, found Alexei with 3 of his guys, explained very clearly what would happen if he continued making threats against you, showed him evidence of every crime he's committed in the last 2 years, enough to put him away for 15 years if it reached the right prosecutor. Then I gave him a choice, take $50,000 and disappear, or stay in New York and deal with both me and the legal system. And he chose the money. He chose survival. Smart kid, actually, smarter than his cousin ever was. Adrian drained his glass. Vincent was there as insurance, but I didn't need him. Problem solved without bodies, without violence, without any of the things you were afraid I'd do. So you're saying you didn't kill him because you're a good person? I'm saying I didn't kill him because there was a better solution. If there hadn't been, the outcome would be different. He set down his glass. I won't apologize for being willing to do what's necessary, Lena, but I will try to find solutions that don't require it. That's the best I can offer. Lena wanted to be angry, wanted to hold on to her moral high ground, to tell him that threatening and bribing was still wrong, even if it wasn't murder. But the exhaustion in his face stopped her. This was who he was, a man trying to be better while refusing to be weak. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good, really, but it was hers. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Adrian looked surprised. Okay? I'm not saying I approve. I'm not saying I'm happy about how you handle things. But I understand why you do it. And I understand that in your world, mercy looks like giving someone $50,000 to run instead of putting them in the ground. She stood, crossed to him. Just promise me something. What? Promise me you'll try to find the nonviolent solution first, always, even if it's harder, even if it takes longer. Our daughter's going to grow up watching how you handle conflict. I need her to see a man who tries diplomacy before destruction. Adrian pulled her close, careful of her belly. I promise I'll try. But Lena, if someone threatens you or her, if someone puts either of you in actual danger, all bets are off. I wouldn't expect anything less. They stood there in the dark penthouse, holding each other, both of them understanding that this was the compromise they'd have to live with. He would try to be better. She would accept that better was relative. And their daughter would grow up in a world protected by a man who loved them enough to be dangerous. It wasn't perfect, but in its own broken way, it was theirs. The invitation arrived 6 weeks later, cream cardstock with gold lettering that made Lena's stomach turn. She held it over the kitchen trash can, remembering the last time, remembering wine and laughter and humiliation. Sterling Foundation Winter Gala, she read aloud. Catherine wants us back at the plaza. Adrian looked up from his laptop, reading glasses perched on his nose in a way that made him look professorial instead of dangerous. We don't have to go. That's what you said last time. Last time I wanted you to see that world. Now I know what it costs. He closed the laptop. We can send a donation and skip the circus entirely. Lena set the invitation on the counter, studying the elegant script. Part of her wanted to throw it away, pretend that world didn't exist, stay safe in the penthouse, where nobody judged her and nobody made her feel small. But another part, the part that had held a dying kid's hand and refused to let fear win, wanted to walk back into that ballroom with her head up. "I think we should go," she said. Adrian's eyebrows rose. "You're sure?" "No, but I'm going anyway." She touched her belly, now 8 months swollen and making everything from bending over to sleeping uncomfortable. "Our daughter needs to see her mother isn't afraid of people who tried to break her, even if I'm terrified." "You don't need to prove anything to anyone, Lena." "I'm not proving anything to them. I'm proving it to myself." The night of the gala, Lena stood in front of the bedroom mirror wearing a navy maternity gown that Adrian had commissioned from an actual designer, someone whose name appeared in magazines Lena had never read. The dress fit perfectly, custom-made for her body, with fabric that draped instead of clung and a neckline that made her look elegant instead of swollen. "You look beautiful," Adrian said from the doorway. "I look pregnant." "You look like my wife, who happens to be beautiful and pregnant." He crossed to her, his hands settling on her hips. Last chance to back out. Not backing out. Even though Victoria and Margaret and Sophia will probably be there. Especially because they'll be there. Lena met his eyes in the mirror. "You made them pay for what they did. Now I need to show them it didn't break me." They arrived at the plaza at 8. The same golden lights, the same marble lobby, the same string quartet playing in the corner. But this time, when they walked in, the energy shifted differently. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they paused. People looked. Some with curiosity, some with caution, some with something that might have been respect. Catherine Sterling materialized immediately, her smile more genuine than last time. "Adrian, Lena, I'm so glad you could make it." To Lena, "You look lovely. How are you feeling?" "Like I'm carrying a bowling ball that kicks," Lena said honestly. Catherine laughed, surprised. "I remember that feeling. My youngest was a terror in utero, kicked constantly. Turned out he had the energy of 3 children once he was born." She touched Lena's arm briefly. "I wanted to apologize again for what happened last time. The way you were treated was unacceptable, and I should have done more to prevent it." "Well, you didn't know it was planned," Lena said. "No, but I created an environment where it could happen. Where people felt comfortable being cruel because they knew there wouldn't be consequences." Catherine's expression turned serious. "Adrian made sure there were consequences, and while his methods were extreme, I understand why he did it. Nobody should have to apologize for being humiliated." Adrian's hand settled on Lena's back. "Is there a point to this conversation, Catherine?" "Yes, actually." Catherine straightened. "The $50 million that Victoria's Trust donated to the Queen's Children's Hospital? They broke ground last month on the new pediatric wing. I attended the ceremony. It's going to change lives, Adrian. Children who couldn't afford proper health care are going to get it because of what you did." "Because of what Victoria did," Adrian corrected. "Even if she needed encouragement. Because of what you made happen." Catherine met his eyes. "I know you don't want credit. I know you'd rather everyone think you're just a ruthless businessman who destroys people for sport. But that hospital wing, that's not destruction. That's transformation." Before Adrian could respond, a voice cut through the lobby. "Lena?" Lena turned. Maria Reyes stood there, wearing a server's uniform from one of Adrian's restaurants instead of the plaza's colors. She looked nervous but determined, holding a tray of champagne glasses. "Maria," Lena said, moving toward her. "I didn't know you'd be working tonight. Mr. Vale's restaurant is catering the event. He asked if I wanted to work it, said it might be good closure." Maria set down her tray. "I wanted to thank you, both of you. That night, when everything happened, I thought my career was over. But Mr. Vale gave me a job and helped me get enrolled in hospitality management classes. I'm going to have a real career now, not just surviving paycheck to paycheck." "You deserve better than how you were treated," Lena said. "So did you." Maria's eyes were fierce. "I saw what they did to you, the way they looked at you, talked about you. It was cruel, and I'm glad Mr. Vale made them pay for it." After Maria returned to work, Lena and Adrian made their way into the ballroom. The setup was similar to last time: round tables, crystal and silver, chandeliers casting everything in golden light. But their assigned table was different now, closer to the head table, more prominent. Senator Michaels was already seated, his wife beside him. They both stood as Adrian and Lena approached. Adrian, Mrs. Vale. The senator's handshake was firmer than last time, his smile more genuine. Good to see you both. How are you feeling? Like I'm about to pop, Lena said, lowering herself carefully into the chair Adrian pulled out. The senator's wife, Margaret, though not the same Margaret who'd been destroyed 6 weeks ago, leaned forward with actual warmth. I remember that stage. Absolutely miserable. But worth it, obviously. They were joined by 2 other couples, a tech CEO and his husband, and a civil rights attorney with her wife. All of them greeted Lena with genuine friendliness, asking about her pregnancy and due date, including her in conversation instead of talking around her. It was strange, disorienting. Last time, she'd been furniture. Tonight, she was a person. Halfway through the first course, Lena excused herself to find the bathroom. Her bladder had become a tyrant in the 3rd trimester, demanding attention at inconvenient moments. She made her way across the ballroom, navigating between tables, aware of eyes following her progress. The bathroom was empty when she entered, marble and mirrors and blissful silence. She was washing her hands when the door opened behind her. Victoria Ashford stood there, looking smaller than she had 6 weeks ago. The platinum hair was the same, the designer gown was elegant, but something fundamental had changed. She looked tired, defeated. Lena, Victoria's voice was quiet. I was hoping I'd run into you. Lena's hands tightened on the sink. If you're here to... I'm here to apologize. Victoria stepped closer, her heels clicking on marble. What I did, what we did, was unforgivable. You were pregnant and vulnerable, and we targeted you because we could, because it made us feel powerful. Her voice broke. I've spent 6 weeks trying to understand why I did it. The best I can come up with is that I was jealous. Adrian chose you, not me, not anyone from our world. You. And instead of accepting that, I tried to prove you didn't belong. Lena dried her hands slowly, studying Victoria's reflection in the mirror. You cost your family $50 million. You lost Adrian's respect. You humiliated yourself in front of everyone who matters. Was proving I didn't belong worth all that? No. Victoria's eyes were red. It wasn't worth any of it. And the worst part? You do belong. Not because you learned which fork to use or bought the right dress, but because Adrian loves you. That makes you more powerful than I ever was. I'm not powerful. I'm just a nurse from Queens who got lucky. You're the woman Adrian Vale destroyed half the city's social structure to protect. That's not luck. That's power. Victoria managed a bitter smile. I told the trust board I wanted the donation to go to the Queen's Hospital. They assumed Adrian forced me. But the truth is, after everything, it felt right. Felt like maybe I could do something decent with money I inherited without earning. Lena turned to face her directly. I don't forgive you. I don't expect you to. But I understand why you did it, and I hope the hospital helps people who need it. Victoria nodded, tears spilling over. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. And your daughter, she's lucky to have parents who will fight for her the way Adrian fought for you. She left before Lena could respond, the door swinging shut with a soft click. Lena stood alone in the bathroom, processing the encounter, trying to reconcile her anger with the broken woman Victoria had become. When she returned to the ballroom, Adrian looked up with concern. You okay? You were gone a while. Victoria was in the bathroom. She apologized. Adrian's expression hardened. Did she upset you? Because if she didn't. Lena sat down carefully. She was just human, broken and sorry, and trying to figure out how to live with what she did. She should be broken. She tried to destroy you, and you destroyed her back. The scales are balanced, Adrian. Lena took his hand. I don't need you to keep fighting battles that are already won. Dinner progressed through multiple courses. The tech CEO told a story about his company's early days that made everyone laugh. The civil rights attorney discussed a recent case that had national implications. Senator Michaels asked Adrian's opinion on a development project, and for once, it felt like genuine consultation rather than political maneuvering. Lena found herself relaxing, participating, even enjoying parts of the evening. This was what she'd hoped for, not acceptance exactly, but neutrality. People treating her like a person instead of a curiosity or a threat. After dessert, Catherine took the stage again for her annual speech. This time, Lena actually listened instead of drowning in anxiety. "This year has been transformative for the Sterling Foundation," Catherine said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "We've expanded our literacy programs to 3 new cities, provided scholarships to over 200 students, and thanks to an extraordinarily generous donation, we've been able to fund a state-of-the-art pediatric wing at Queen's Memorial Hospital." Polite applause. Catherine waited for it to settle. "But beyond the numbers and the programs, this year taught me something important about accountability. About creating spaces where everyone feels valued, not just the people we've decided matter. About recognizing that cruelty has consequences, and those consequences should be meaningful." Her eyes found Lena in the crowd, held for a moment. "So tonight, I want to acknowledge someone who showed remarkable grace under circumstances that would have broken most people. Lena Vale, would you stand, please?" Lena's stomach dropped. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. "You don't have to," he whispered. But she did. Because sitting down would be hiding, and she was done hiding. Lena stood, her hand on her belly, aware of every eye in the ballroom tracking her movement. "6 weeks ago," Catherine continued, "Lena was humiliated at our gala. And instead of accepting that behavior as normal, her husband made it clear that it wasn't acceptable, that actions have consequences, that power should be used to protect, not to harm." She paused. "Lena, thank you for coming back. Thank you for showing us that grace and strength aren't opposites." The applause started slowly, then built. Not everyone participated. Some people sat with their hands in their laps, faces carefully neutral. But enough people clapped that it felt real, genuine. Lena sat down, her face burning. Adrian leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. "You okay? Ask me when my heart rate returns to normal." The orchestra started playing, and couples drifted to the dance floor. Adrian stood, offering his hand. "Dance with me." "Adrian, I'm 8 months pregnant. I can barely walk without waddling." "So we'll waddle together." She let him lead her to the floor, his arm solid around her expanded waist. They swayed more than danced, moving to the music without any of the grace or elegance of the other couples. Lena stepped on his feet twice. Adrian didn't seem to notice. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave enough to come back here. For not letting them win. For—" He paused, searching for words. "For loving someone like me even when you don't like how I handle things." "You're not so bad," Lena said. "Terrifying sometimes. Excessive, definitely, but not bad. High praise. Don't let it go to your head." They turned slowly, and Lena caught sight of Margaret Rothschild sitting alone at a table near the back, nursing a drink and looking diminished. Sophia Blackwell was at another table, her husband notably absent, her expression carefully blank. And Victoria stood near the bar, watching the dancers with something that looked like longing. "They look miserable," Lena observed. "Good." "Adrian." "What? You want me to feel sorry for them after what they did?" "No, but I don't need you to keep hating them either. They're already broken. You made sure of that." She leaned her head against his chest, tired and uncomfortable, and strangely at peace. "Can we just be done with revenge? Can we focus on our family instead of our enemies?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his hand moving in slow circles on her back. "Yeah, we can do that." The song ended. They made their way back to the table where Lena's feet were screaming for relief, and her back was starting to ache in the way that meant she'd been upright too long. Senator Michaels was deep in conversation with the tech CEO. Their wives were laughing about something, normal people having normal conversations at a fancy party. "Can we leave soon?" Lena whispered to Adrian. "Whenever you want." They made it another 30 minutes before Lena admitted defeat. Her back was killing her. Her feet had swollen so much her shoes felt like torture devices, and the baby was doing gymnastics that made sitting uncomfortable. Adrian had them out of the plaza in under 5 minutes, bypassing the drawn-out goodbyes that seemed mandatory for everyone else. The town car was warm and quiet. Lena kicked off her shoes with a groan of relief, leaning back against the leather seats. "That wasn't terrible," she said. "High praise," Adrian repeated with a smile. "I mean it. It was actually okay. People were nice. Catherine's speech was good. Nobody threw wine on me. She laughed. The bar is low, but we cleared it. Adrian pulled her closer, careful of her belly. I'm proud of you. Walking back into that room took guts. Or stupidity. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. They rode in comfortable silence, the city sliding past the windows, lights and movement and 8 million people living their lives without knowing or caring about galas and grudges and social hierarchies. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably crying into expensive vodka. Margaret was calculating how to rebuild her professional reputation. Sophia was explaining to her husband why his company lost a crucial contract, and Lena was going home with Adrian to their penthouse with the nursery that was almost finished, to the life they were building together despite its complications. Adrian, she said as they pulled up to their building. Yeah? Promise me something. What? Promise me we'll raise our daughter differently, that we'll teach her to be kind but not to let people walk over her, strong but not cruel, that we'll show her there's a middle ground between being a victim and being a monster. Adrian helped her out of the car, his hand supporting her lower back as they walked to the elevator. I promise we'll try. But Lena, if anyone ever tries to hurt her the way those women hurt you, all bets are off. I know, and honestly, I'm okay with that. She pressed the button for the 40th floor. I just want her to be better than both of us, kinder than you, stronger than me. Maybe she'll figure out how to exist in your world without becoming hard. Our world, Adrian corrected. It's your world now, too. The elevator rose, carrying them away from the city below, up to their home where the nursery waited with its pale yellow walls and hand-carved crib and stuffed animals arranged on shelves. In 6 weeks, maybe less, their daughter would be here, real and breathing, and theirs. Are you scared? Lena asked. Terrified. You? Out of my mind. She took his hand, placing it on her belly where the baby kicked. But we'll figure it out. We always do. That night, Lena dreamed of the ballroom, but different this time. In the dream, she walked through crowds that parted respectfully, her head high, her daughter held safe in her arms. Adrian was beside her, not threatening anyone, not destroying anything, just present and solid. And when she looked down at the baby's face, she saw a future that wasn't written yet, a life they could shape into something better than revenge and power games. She woke at dawn, Adrian still asleep beside her, morning light filtering through the curtains. Her back ached. Her feet were swollen. The baby was pressing on her bladder again. Everything about being 8 months pregnant was uncomfortable and exhausting and occasionally miserable. But when she looked at Adrian's sleeping face, relaxed and younger without the weight of his dangerous responsibilities, Lena felt something that transcended comfort. Not happiness exactly. Their life was too complicated for simple happiness. But contentment, maybe. Acceptance of who they were and what they'd built together. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Sarah. Saw photos from the gala online. You looked amazing. Also, pretty sure Victoria Ashford is having a breakdown in the comments section. Want to get brunch and judge people together? Lena smiled, typing back. Brunch sounds perfect, but no judging Victoria. She suffered enough. You're too nice. This is why you need me. Someone has to be petty on your behalf. That's what I have Adrian for. Fair point. See you at 11. Bring your appetite and your gossip. Adrian stirred beside her, his arm coming around her waist, pulling her closer despite her bulk. What are you smiling about? Sarah wants brunch, and to judge Victoria's social media spiral. Sounds like a perfect Sunday. He kissed her shoulder. How are you feeling? Like I'm carrying a bowling ball that kicks. Same as yesterday. Same as tomorrow, probably. She turned to face him. But good. Last night was good. Not perfect, but good. You set a low bar. And yet people keep failing to clear it. She touched his face, her palm against his jaw. Thank you for not killing anyone at the gala. The night's not over yet. Adrian? Kidding, mostly. He grinned. I'm trying to be better, remember? Finding nonviolent solutions first. Being someone our daughter can be proud of. She'll be proud of you no matter what. You're her father. You'll be her hero just by existing. Lena shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. They'll maybe skip the stories about destroying people's lives until she's older. Let's start with more traditional bedtime tales. What? The Three Little Pigs isn't a story about eliminating threats to your home security? Not the way most people tell it. They lay there as the morning light grew stronger, talking about nothing important, making plans for the nursery's final touches, debating baby names they'd never agree on, normal couple things, mundane and beautiful and theirs. At 10:45, Lena got up to get ready for brunch, moving slowly because everything hurt and her center of gravity was completely shot. Adrian helped her with her shoes, she couldn't reach her own feet anymore, and called down to have Marcus bring the car around. "You don't need to send security," Lena said. "It's just brunch with Sarah. Humor me. Alexei might be gone, but there are always other threats." At her look, he sighed. "Fine, no security, but you call me if anything feels wrong." "I will. And you stay in public places." "It's a restaurant, Adrian. That's about as public as it gets. And you—" "I'll be fine." She kissed him to stop the litany of warnings. "Relax. Nobody's going to mess with the pregnant woman at Sunday brunch. That's a PR nightmare nobody wants." Brunch with Sarah was exactly what Lena needed. Mimosas for Sarah, orange juice for Lena, overpriced avocado toast for both of them, and an hour of discussing everything from baby names to Victoria's very public meltdown in the gala photos comment section. "She wrote like 15 paragraphs about recognizing her privilege and committing to be better," Sarah reported, scrolling through her phone. "It's actually kind of sad. She's trying so hard to rehab her image, but everyone's just roasting her harder." "Let it go," Lena said. "She apologized in person. That's what matters." "You're too forgiving. If someone humiliated me while I was pregnant, I'd want them destroyed." "Adrian already handled the destruction part. I'm just trying to move on." Sarah set down her phone, studying Lena's face. "You're different. Since the first gala. You're more, I don't know, solid." "I'm 8 months pregnant. Everything about me is solid." "That's not what I mean. You're more confident, less apologetic, like you finally believe you deserve the life you're living." Lena considered that. "Maybe I do. Or maybe I just stopped caring whether other people think I deserve it." She sipped her orange juice. "Adrian loves me. Our daughter is healthy. I have friends who show up for me. That's enough. I don't need Victoria Ashford's approval or Catherine Sterling's validation." "Look at you, all evolved and mature. What happened to the woman who cried in my car about not fitting in?" "She got wine thrown on her dress and decided being herself was easier than trying to be someone else." They finished brunch with plans to meet up again next week, before Lena's movement became too restricted. Sarah hugged her carefully, avoiding the belly. "Call me if you need anything. And I mean anything. Adrian's great at the dramatic gestures, but sometimes you just need a friend who'll bring you ice cream and tell you you're not crazy." "I'm definitely crazy. I married a former crime boss." "Mostly former," Sarah corrected with a grin. "Don't forget the mostly." Lena took a cab back to the penthouse, her body tired but her mind clear. The apartment was quiet when she arrived. Adrian had left a note saying he was at one of the restaurants dealing with a supplier issue, would be back by dinner. The nursery door was open, afternoon light streaming through the window, illuminating the space they'd created for their daughter. Lena stood in the doorway, one hand on her belly, imagining the nights ahead. The 2 a.m. feedings, the diaper changes, the crying and exhaustion and overwhelming love. She thought about Victoria's words. "Your daughter is lucky to have parents who will fight for her." Lucky. Maybe. Or maybe their daughter would grow up resenting the protection, the power, the way her father solved problems with force and money. Maybe she'd rebel against everything they represented, seeking a simpler life away from penthouses and galas and the weight of the veil name. Or maybe she'd be exactly like Adrian, dangerous and protective and incapable of letting threats stand. Or maybe, hopefully, she'd be someone entirely new. Someone who took Lena's kindness and Adrian's strength and created something better than both. The baby kicked hard, as if agreeing. Lena laughed, pressing her hand against the movement. "You're going to be something, aren't you? Your father's already planning to terrify your first date. I'm already planning to teach you that not everything requires a dramatic response. Between us, you're either going to be incredibly well-adjusted or you'll need so much therapy." Her phone buzzed. Adrian. "Supplier issue resolved. Heading home. Want me to pick up dinner?" "Yes, and ice cream, mint chocolate chip." "Done. Love you." "Love you too." Lena moved to the window, looking out at the city spread below. Somewhere down there, Victoria was trying to rebuild her reputation. Margaret was calculating her next career move. Sophia was figuring out how to survive her husband's company going under. And millions of other people were living their lives, fighting their battles, making their compromises. 6 weeks ago, she'd stood in a ballroom covered in wine, apologizing for existing. Tonight, she'd stood in that same ballroom wearing a custom gown, watching the people who'd tried to break her realize they'd failed. It wasn't triumph exactly. Triumph suggested winning something, but it was survival. It was refusing to disappear. It was enough. Adrian came home an hour later with Thai food and mint chocolate chip ice cream and stories about the supplier who'd tried to inflate prices until Adrian explained very calmly why that was a bad idea. They ate dinner on the couch, Lena's feet in Adrian's lap while he massaged the swelling. Normal domestic life, comfortable and mundane. "I've been thinking," Adrian said between bites of pad thai, "about what you said, raising our daughter differently." "Yeah? I want to set up a foundation, not like Catherine's, something that actually helps people without all the gala bullshit, something that funds medical care for families who can't afford it, maybe scholarships for kids from neighborhoods like where you grew up." He paused. "I want our daughter to see that power can build things, not just destroy them." Lena set down her fork, staring at him. "You want to start a charity? I want to do something decent with money I made doing indecent things. Turn it into something that matters." His hand moved up her calf, kneading a knot in her muscle. "You made me want to be better. The foundation feels like a start." Adrian Vale, former crime boss, current philanthropist. That's quite the character arc. "Mostly former," he corrected with a grin. "I keep telling you, old connections don't just disappear. As long as you're using those connections for good now." Define good. Not killing people, not destroying lives, not making enemies out of everyone who looks at you wrong. That's a very restrictive definition. "Adrian." "I'm kidding." He pulled her closer, mindful of her belly. "I promise I'm trying to be the man our daughter deserves, even if I'm not there yet. You're closer than you think." They fell asleep on the couch, the TV playing quietly, Adrian's hand resting on Lena's belly, where their daughter kicked and moved. Outside, the city hummed with its millions of stories, its endless complications, its beautiful broken people, all trying to survive. 4 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that started with Lena's water breaking all over their expensive hardwood floors, their daughter arrived. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with dark hair, and Adrian's gray-blue eyes and lungs that announced her presence to the entire maternity ward. They named her Elena, after Adrian's mother, who died when he was 12 and left him to be raised by a father who taught him that power mattered more than people. It felt right, giving their daughter a name that carried hope for a different legacy. Sarah visited that afternoon, bringing flowers and inappropriately large teddy bears. "She's perfect, absolutely perfect, though I have to say she already has Adrian's intimidating stare." "She's 2 hours old," Lena protested, "and already judging me for not bringing better gifts. I see it in her eyes." Sarah leaned over the bassinet. "Hi, Elena. I'm your Aunt Sarah. I'm going to teach you all the things your parents won't, like how to be petty and hold grudges and judge people's fashion choices." "That's not helpful," Lena said. "That's essential life skills." Adrian arrived with a coffee, real coffee for Lena now that the pregnancy was over, and an expression of shell-shocked wonder that hadn't left his face since Elena was born. He'd held her for the first hour, refusing to let the nurses take her for routine checks, convinced something would go wrong if she left his sight. "You need to let her breathe," Lena had finally said. "She's fine, we're all fine." But watching him hold their daughter, seeing the fierce protectiveness in every line of his body, Lena understood. This was Adrian's entire world now, reduced to 7 pounds of helpless humanity that depended on him completely. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. 3 days later, they brought Elena home to the penthouse. The nursery they'd spent months preparing suddenly seemed inadequate. The crib too big, the room too cold, everything wrong in ways Lena couldn't articulate. But Adrian set Elena gently in her bassinet, and she slept peacefully, oblivious to her parents' anxiety. "We're going to screw this up," Lena whispered. "Definitely," Adrian agreed, "but we'll screw it up together." The first month was a blur of sleepless nights and endless diapers, and moments of pure panic when Elena cried for reasons they couldn't understand. Sarah visited weekly, bringing food and reassurance. Adrian hired a night nurse against Lena's protests because you need sleep and I need to know you're not going to collapse from exhaustion. Slowly, they found their rhythm. Elena developed a personality, stubborn like her father, observant like her mother, with a cry that could shatter glass when she was displeased. Adrian installed security that would make Fort Knox jealous. Lena taught him how to change diapers and make bottles and function on 3 hours of sleep. They were exhausted and overwhelmed and occasionally desperate. They were happy. 6 months after Elena was born, Catherine Sterling called. Adrian, I wanted to let you know the pediatric wing at Queen's Memorial opened last week. It's extraordinary. They're already seeing twice as many patients as projected. That's good news. I thought you'd want to know that Victoria attended the opening. She's been volunteering there, actually, reading to children in the cancer ward. She says it helps her remember what matters. Adrian glanced at Lena, who was feeding Elena on the couch, her hair in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and one of his old t-shirts. Good for Victoria. She asked if you might consider forgiving her. Eventually. Tell her to ask my wife. I'm done deciding who deserves forgiveness. After hanging up, Adrian relayed the conversation to Lena. She looked up from Elena, considering. What do you think? He asked. I think Victoria is trying to be better. I think she's learning what you've been learning. That power should build things, not destroy them. Lena adjusted Elena's position. I think maybe forgiveness isn't about her deserving it. It's about us not carrying that anger anymore. So you forgive her? I'm getting there. Ask me again next year. Elena finished eating, her tiny hand gripping Lena's finger, her eyes, Adrian's eyes, staring up with complete trust. This was what mattered. Not grudges or revenge or social hierarchies, just this. Their daughter safe and fed and loved. Their family together. Their future unwritten. We should take her to the hospital, Lena said suddenly. The pediatric wing. Let her see what her father's protection bought. She's 6 months old. She won't understand. No, but we will. We'll understand that something good came from all that anger and destruction. That Victoria's cruelty got transformed into care for children who need it. She looked up at him. I want our daughter to grow up knowing that even the worst things can become something better. That redemption is possible. Even for people like Victoria. Even for people like you. I don't need redemption. Everyone needs redemption, Adrian. You just had the power to demand yours on your own terms. They went to the hospital the following week, Adrian, Lena, and Elena, plus Marcus hovering nearby because some habits died hard. The pediatric wing was bright and cheerful, with murals on the walls and play areas designed to make sick children forget they were sick. Victoria was there, reading to a group of kids in the cancer ward, her voice gentle and patient. She looked up when they entered, surprise flickering across her face. Lena, Adrian, I didn't know you were coming. We wanted to see what $50 million bought, Adrian said. Victoria set down her book, approaching slowly like they might disappear if she moved too fast. It bought hope. Real tangible hope for families who had none. Her eyes dropped to Elena. She's beautiful. What's her name? Elena. Elena, Victoria repeated softly. That's lovely. She looked at Lena. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm trying to be better. Every day, I come here and read to these kids, and I remember what matters. Real suffering. Real need, not social hierarchies and power games. Good, Lena said. Keep doing that. That's it? Just good? What do you want, Victoria? Absolution? Permission to stop feeling guilty? Lena shifted Elena in her arms. You don't get those from me. You get them from yourself by continuing to be better than you were, by helping people instead of hurting them. That's the only redemption that matters. Victoria's eyes filled. Thank you for coming here, for not hating me forever. I don't hate you, I just don't think about you much anymore. Lena touched Elena's head. I'm too busy with my family to waste energy on grudges. They left Victoria there, surrounded by sick children who didn't know her history, who just saw a nice lady who read them stories. Adrian held Elena while Lena navigated the hospital corridors. She knew this building, had worked here before Adrian, before Elena, before everything changed. This feels right, she said. Coming full circle like this. Starting here as a nurse, ending here as a mother, seeing this wing that wouldn't exist if Victoria hadn't been cruel. You sound like you're grateful she humiliated you. I'm not grateful for the humiliation, but I'm grateful for what came after, for you standing up for me, for showing me I deserve to be defended, for all of it leading here. She took Elena back from Adrian, pressing her face against her daughter's soft hair. Everything that happened, the gala, the threats, the revenge, Victoria's downfall, it all led to this moment, Elena existing, us being a family, that hospital wing saving lives. You're getting philosophical. I'm a mother now. We're allowed to be philosophical. It's in the contract. They walked out of the hospital into afternoon sunlight, their daughter between them, their complicated past behind them, their uncertain future ahead. Not perfect, never perfect, but theirs. 3 years later, they attended the Sterling Foundation Gala again, this time with Elena toddling between them in a tiny dress that cost more than Adrian's first car, her dark curls bouncing, her gray-blue eyes taking in everything with fearless curiosity. Catherine greeted them warmly. The Vale family. Elena, you've gotten so big. Elena hid behind Lena's leg, suddenly shy. Lena laughed. She's brave until people actually talk to her. The ballroom was familiar now, not threatening, just a room full of wealthy people drinking expensive wine and pretending their donations made them virtuous. But Lena no longer felt like an imposter. She was Adrian Vale's wife, Elena's mother, a woman who'd survived humiliation and come back stronger. Victoria approached midway through dinner, asking permission before sitting at their table. She looked healthier, more grounded, like she'd found something real to care about beyond social standing. How's the hospital? Lena asked. Thriving. We're adding another wing next year. Adrian, I wanted to ask if you'd consider matching funds again. Adrian glanced at Lena. What do you think? I think our foundation can handle it. But Victoria, you have to do the fundraising dinner. No more riding on other people's money. Victoria smiled. Deal. I've actually gotten good at asking for donations. Turns out people want to help when you give them something real to care about. Elena tugged on Lena's dress. Mama, can we dance? In a minute, baby. Now! Elena's imperious tone made everyone at the table laugh. Adrian stood, scooping his daughter into his arms. Come on, little dictator. Let's show them how it's done. Elena watched them move to the dance floor. Adrian, dangerous and powerful, and completely undone by a 3-year-old with his eyes. And Elena, fearless and demanding, and already convinced the world existed to give her what she wanted. They were going to have their hands full when she got older, but for now, she was just a little girl dancing with her father at a fancy party, unaware of the history that had led to this moment. You did it, Sarah said, appearing beside Lena with champagne. You took the worst night of your life and turned it into this. That's pretty badass. I had help. Yeah, but Adrian just did what Adrian does, bulldoze through obstacles with money and intimidation. You're the one who chose forgiveness, who chose to keep showing up, who chose to build something instead of just destroying what hurt you. Sarah raised her glass. To badass women who refuse to stay broken. Lena clinked her water glass against Sarah's champagne. To badass women. That night, after Elena was asleep and the babysitter had left, Lena and Adrian stood in the nursery doorway watching their daughter dream. She'd insisted on keeping her fancy dress on, refusing to change into pajamas, so she slept in tulle and ribbons like a tiny princess. She's going to be trouble, Adrian observed. She's already trouble. Did you see her ordering that senator to get her apple juice? She's 3 and she's already mastered your intimidation tactics. That's my girl. Lena leaned against him, tired and content. Do you ever regret it? How we started? The chaos and the revenge and everything that came after? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. I regret that you got hurt. But everything else, the consequences, the destruction, the price I made people pay. He shook his head. No. You needed someone to stand up for you. I did that. I'd do it again tomorrow if someone threatened you or Elena. I know you would. That's what scares me and comforts me in equal measure. I'm trying to be better. The foundation, the legitimate businesses, choosing diplomacy before destruction. But Lena, if someone threatens my family, all that goes out the window. You need to understand that about me. I do understand, and I love you anyway, even though you're terrifying and excessive and occasionally make me want to throttle you. She turned to face him. But promise me something. What? Promise me that when Elena asks about how we met, we'll tell her the real story. Not a sanitized version where I was a damsel and you were a knight. The real story where I was scared and you were dangerous, and together we figured out how to survive your world. She's 3. She'll just want the princess version. Now, yes, but eventually she'll be old enough for the truth. And I want her to know that love isn't perfect, that families are complicated, that her father has done questionable things and her mother married him anyway, because real love means accepting someone's darkness along with their light. Adrian pulled her close, his chin resting on her head. Deal. We'll tell her the real story, the wine, the revenge, the threats, all of it. And maybe she'll understand that protection sometimes looks like destruction. That love sometimes requires being dangerous. They stood there in the doorway, watching their daughter sleep, their complicated past behind them, their uncertain future ahead. Not perfect. Never perfect. But theirs. And in the end, that was enough.